In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and most merciful. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and very warm welcome in the Inception Conference on development of an SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan. I am Muhammad Faisal Sharif, and on behalf of PPIB, STPI, UNESCAPE, I warmly welcome all dignitaries, officials from PPIB, STPI, UNESCAPE, and other esteemed guests present here for the conference. The government of Pakistan, pursuant to objectives of SDG7 and Paris agreements, have shown strong commitments towards clean energy transition, targeting 60% share of renewable energy by 2030, 30% share of electricity vehicles, doubling the energy efficiency, and 50% reduction in its projected carbon emissions by 2030. Out of that 50%, the 15% is based on country's own resources, whereas the 35% is conditional to the availability of international climate finance. The National Electricity Policy 2021 envisioned a sustainable power sector well in line with the country's international commitments on climate change. However, there are certain socio-economic, technical, and infrastructure challenges posing threats to clean energy transitions. And in order to understand that whether we have access of uniform electricity by 2030, we need to understand whether our current policies, plans are sufficient to meet the objectives and targets of 2030, or there's any gap in the policies. So the country needs a comprehensive implementation roadmap on SDG7. So the United Nations Economic Social Commission for Asia Pacific has been assisting the governments in Asia Pacific region in developing SDG7 roadmap in line with the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Developments and objectives of Paris agreements. In view of technical and policy level benefits associated with the program, the government of Pakistan and the Ministry of Energy Power Division showed its interest in the program of SCAP, that is a national expert training SDG tool for energy planning, and designated PPIB as a focal agency to provide collaboration and support to SCAPE and STPI in formulation of SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan. The STPI is logistic and data collecting partner in the assignments, and they'll provide the activities related to these projects. The PPIB, the anticipated roadmap for SDG7 for Pakistan will contain a matrix of technological options and policy measures for consideration of GOP to achieve the SDG7 targets and carbon emission reduction targets in line with the National Determined Contribution Report 2021. Further, the SDG7 roadmap will provide information on the optimal share of renewable energy in the energy mix, and also provide different scenarios along with the technical, financial, economic implication of each scenarios. The roadmap will be fully customized with the national context of the Pakistan. So now I'll hand over to Dr. Hina to brief the audience about the stakeholders engagement, agenda, and roadmap of the workshop.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for the introduction. I would like to take this forward to describe the objectives of today's workshop. So be very specific in terms of why we have gathered here, including all the stakeholders for the development of SDG. We are going to outline the important steps and tasks for the roadmap to be completed in 2022 to 2023, as well as looking beyond to 2030. Also, we are here to gather and update you all on the progress to date and to engage all of you in the discussion and the debate on how the developing SDG roadmap for Pakistan is crucial to combat energy crisis of Pakistan. I would like to go through some of the roadmap for today's work, today's agenda. So we'll have some keynote addresses by our distinguished speakers. We'll have technical presentations from different sectors: energy, power, transport, and industrial sector. Then we will move on to 3 parallel working group discussions on energy access, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, moderated by our colleagues here. The suggestions and the recommendations of these working groups and the workshop will be recorded for using in the modeling exercise through the Next Step tool that has been developed by United Nations Economic Social Commission of Asia Pacific, UNSCAP, for the development of SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan. We are very honored to be joined us by distinguished panelists who have spared their time to join us for this Inception workshop. And we are extremely grateful to all of them to take out their time out of their busy schedules. Before I move on to introduce our distinguished guests one by one, I would also like to inform that we will be joined by the Federal Minister for Power, Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan, in the afternoon session to provide his concluding remarks. So to begin with, I would like to invite Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, who is the Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, for the welcoming remarks.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my learned panelists on podium, and all of you who care for a clean and green future, very warm welcome to this roundtable, this workshop that hopefully would give some sanity on what's going on energy pathways. Some of you may have been wondering that why I was using phone while the meeting was on. I was just trying to rope in some political buy-in to the workshop, and very soon we'll be joined, though briefly, by Ms. Romina Khurshid, who has recently been appointed as head of Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals. So as you know that in the Parliament, there is a task force on SDGs, and I thought it's important to have some sort of political buy-in. I know that most of you, you believe, almost all of you believe in a clean and green future. You believe in how to promote renewable energy, how to take Pakistan out of this mess. Partly energy is also a part of the problem, but I thought that unless and until we have someone from Parliament here who could at least get some feel of the discussion, we'll just be trying to preach the converted. And she's on way. She'll be joining us briefly. But what I wanted to say today in Pakistan, I think if anything can define make or break of government, it is energy. You might have been observing for last 2 months, government was struggling how to roll back the subsidies on POL products, which is energy. So, okay, let me welcome Ms. Romina Khurshid, who has joined us on a very short notice, and that actually tells the devotion and dedication of some of our parliamentarians. So I gave her a call at 10:19 and requested her to join us, and in less than 15 minutes, she's here from Parliament. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I was just telling the participants that thanks that you very gracefully invited, very gracefully accepted our last minute invitation and joined here. So it is her first week as the head of Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals, a task force which is set up in the Parliament, comprising both the members of Senate as well as a member of National Assembly. So thanks, ma'am. And today, as I was explaining to the participant, we are discussing SDG7, a roadmap for SDG7 for affordable, clean, and green energy. And I just started by saying that today this SDG7 has become more important in Pakistan's political context than it was ever. Government have been mulling to how to roll back the fuel subsidies during last 2 months, and fuel subsidies, they have become a make or break step to resume IMF package. Now going forward, in the context of what I call triple C crisis, COVID-19, conflict in Ukraine, and climate change, energy prices are going to increase. This triple C crisis that is going to have a double whammy, that two effects that one can foresee. One is very high food prices, and second is very high energy prices. So I think this market demands and the increase in petrol prices, diesel prices, electricity and gas, that itself would become an incentive for consumers to start shifting towards renewable energy. So apart from whatever the government was trying to do during last 5-6 years, this simple thing, selling energy at market price would force consumers to think of some cheaper alternatives. Of course, there is always some light at the end of tunnel and some ray of hope in a crisis. So in this energy crisis, the ray of hope that I foresee is very quick adoption of solar energy, very quick adoption of hybrid cars, and very quick adoption of other renewables, because our fossil fuel, they would simply become unaffordable. But of course, it's not the only one. I should also appreciate here and acknowledge the presence of PPIB and PPIB's Executive Director, Mr. Shahjahan Mirza Saab and his team, and UNESCAP, which is working very closely with stakeholders in Pakistan for adoption towards clean and green Pakistan. So I know that Romina has to reach back to Parliament. She has to leave at 11. So I thought I must set the context, and I'll hand over the proceeding back to Hina. So Hina, if after Shahjahan Saab, we can take a brief welcome remark from Shahjahan Saab. I know he has to give a keynote address as well, but if he can give a summary of what he would be presenting to Romina Khurshid Saba, and then we can listen Romina Saba, and then we can proceed with your program. I'm sorry for these last minute adjustments, but I thought it's important that Shahjahan Saab give his perspective to Romina Saba while she's here.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to appreciate this very timely and I would say very critical initiative of UNESCAP STPI in cooperation with PPIB, which will actually set I would say a scientific and a proper basis on which we can actually design our policies and our mechanism to reach the SDG7 goal, which of course is by 2030 universal access of electricity to all population as affordable, sustainable prices. So I think that's the goal which Pakistan also want to follow, and the Pakistan government is working on many fronts in this respect. So this UNESCAP and STPI initiative is certainly helpful, because whenever we come to policy making, generally as a country, what we lack is two things we lack. One is the reliable data and reliable numbers on which we can actually design our policy. And if the data is wrong, obviously we are going to end up with no achievement. And second is generally we make these policies in sort of a hurry, and we never actually analyzed it on a scientific or some econometric basis or with some proper modeling of the policies and the results. So I think this next step software of UNESCAPE is certainly helpful in designing a policy which is actually sustainable, which is accepted by all stakeholders. And in the end, it achieves all the objectives which we have set in as a country. So NDCs has also been announced, and we have been given huge targets. In the PPIB, what we are doing, our main thrust now is, of course, we have developed the RFO-based projects, coal-based project, but going forward, our main thrust is on the hydropower projects. So we'll be focusing more and more on the clean and green hydropower projects. Currently, we have a portfolio of over 6,000 megawatt of hydropower projects in PPIB. And my second assignment, where I have been given charge of the CEO of Alternative Energy Development Board, we are preparing there, I would say, an ambitious plan to bring in 10,000 megawatt of renewable energy projects, mainly from wind and solar based. Currently, our renewable energy share is only 6% in the power generation, and we want to take it up to 30% by 2030. And as Faisal said earlier, our indicative generation expansion plan for the next 10 years, that actually sets the target that by 2030-31, we'll be generating 61% of the energy from the clean and green resources, which includes hydro, wind, solar, and other like biomass and other resources of renewable energy. So I would say this will be a great achievement if we could establish this. And these type of workshop and seminars and the support from the international agencies like the UNESCAPE and the professional institution like STPI, they are really helpful in terms of framing the right policy and setting the right goals for achieving these objectives. So with this, I stop here and will give the chance to Ms. For actually taking the forward. I'll talk in detail later on in my keynote address regarding what we're doing in detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shahjahan Saab. With this, I would like to invite our distinguished guest, Ms. Romina Khurshid, to give special remarks for this event. And we are very highly thankful for taking time out of her busy schedule at the last minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Hina. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all of you. First of all, I'm so sorry just to coming and to just I just make it, I think, little hodge podge, everything little get disturbed, but I'm so sorry. But I really thankful to Mr. Abid Suleri, and first of all, that to invite me on this special goal, because this is something which is very, although each and every goal is very close to my heart, but I really believe this is a great need of the time. So I really want to thank PPIB, Mr. Shahjahan, and then Next Step, and of course UNESCAPE, and of course SDPI, which I believe this is my second term in the parliament, and where I believe whenever I feel any challenge, I can come to this place and I can do my wonders. I can, like, start anything. I can move anything, any lake towards anywhere where I want. But just coming back to the point, because first of all, it's not that I just came for a very short time and I'm just going back. I'm very much engaged this goal. I think with Ms. Hannah, we were being supposed to come on the 3 o'clock as well. And I've requested them that I want all the those recommendations and suggestions from your side. We would really want to take forward, because SDG, especially SDG7, or in whatever input you guys are putting over here, that can be a great help to us. And of course, together we can achieve our goals. Single-handed or one-man army won't work in these things. We need to work as a parliamentarian. I don't say that I am a person who knew each and everything. Of course, your expertise, your research, and these things can help us to come up with the policies and for the way forward. As I'm already working on the renewable energy, and as unfortunately I don't have much time, because the Speaker Saab has had a meeting with, or is going to have a meeting with all of us for the National SDGs Task Force to meet up, because this was being long awaited. So we are going to do that. This is my basically a third day of being the convener of SDG. So we are trying to do whatever we can do in the short term. As we are talking about the clean and green energies, as we are talking about so much. I'm listening from you. Of course, I believe learning has no end, and probably I'll get back to the all points which we are going to have. I just wanted to request that as everybody knows that in our government, it's always been a great interest of the public transport. I was someone who was not being liked very much because I believe we need to focus on the energy consumption as well, that how much energy where we need, because most probably we have seen in different areas that we don't focus that how much energy is being needed, what is the consumption of any building, and but we just love to overload the thing. Same goes with the water, same goes, and then afterwards we got the crisis. But as we're talking about the renewable energy, I must say yes, the clean and green Pakistan can also work, but other than that, we need to focus not on everything, we need to focus on the concrete plan. I would request to Mr. Abid Suleri and Mr. Shah Jahan and all the partners who are sitting over here, that we need to focus on the energy efficiency as well. And we need to focus on the concrete plan, and then that plan can help the parliamentarians, that plan can help specifically the SDGs Secretariat, that we can, along with your help, whatever the plan will come, we can work on the policy level. We can, because as in the last term, in the last 4 years, I must say that I'm in the Climate Change Committee as well, and then I've served as the ex-parliamentary secretary for the climate change. We tried to focus more over, we wanted to come up with the e-vehicle policy as well, but we had faced so many challenges for the charging size, that where one can charge, and so many issues. I just don't want to go in that side, but I just wanted to request once again that I'm looking forward to you guys for your concrete plan, in which the suggestions, because I'm sure such a talented people who are sitting over here will definitely come up and sum up some plan, the policy which can help every one of you, not to single person, because we have seen these challenges that if something come, everybody says that this thing is helping to some sector, to another sector. I believe in the public, because I'm from a public person. I believe that we need to come up with some solid sort of a plan in which everybody can get the benefit. Even the industries could get benefit, even the people should get benefit, even everyone, because our main focus is to facilitate the people. So I would request everything. I'm just, because I have to leave, but I just wanted to request Hina that please keep us posted, and wherever you guys need my office, my number is very much here. My email ID is Rumina, ROMINA.MNA@gmail.com. I'll repeat, Rumina, ROMINA.MNA@gmail.com. Please, this is very much open forum. You can please, anytime you can pursue to me, you can come to the parliament, we can sit, we can discuss, or we can visit to your place. I'm looking forward to you. With all this, I would really like to thank, and once again, I'm so sorry. I would really wanted to come, but I'll keep with you, and I think I'll visit by 3 o'clock. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Romina, for the wonderful remarks. And of course, it's very encouraging to see that our parliamentarians, the task force, is very much in support to this initiative in achieving the Agenda 2030. And SDG7 is, of course, the most crucial one in the times of today. With this, I would like to move on to our keynote addresses. And firstly, as Dr. Abid had already introduced Mr. Shah Jahan Sahab, but let me give a little bit more introduction of Shah Jahan sir in terms of he's not only the managing director of PPIB, but he's also a chief executive director of AEDB. He's a graduate in investment management from Cass Business School, London, and master's in business administration, and carries more than 34 years of professional experience in the areas of evaluation, development, and financing of large-scale power generation in infrastructure projects, including facilitation of investors, strategic management, policy formulation, public procurement, contract administration, tariff structuring, and much more. And we are very honored to be listening to his keynote address for today's initiative. So I would like to request Mr. Shah Jahan to please come on the stage. Thank you.
distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. And thank you, Dr. Hina, for giving very generous introduction for me. So I think if we look at the objective of this workshop, as has been said by Dr. Abuswalari and Dr. Hina also, so what we are trying to establish here, see what our country, what potential has, and how actually we can utilize this potential to reach our objectives and the goals. I think that should be the fundamental purpose of running these type of workshop, so that the recommendation we get from these workshops that could really help in contributing towards the policy making and towards achievement of that goal. As we all know, Pakistan is a country endowed with abundant indigenous resources, whether it is hydel, whether it is a solar, whether it is the wind. So in that way, we are very much blessed country. So government of Pakistan is emphasizing on utilization of these resources to keep in the limits of the country's GHG emission in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goal, which is SDG7, of course, access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, clean and modern energy for all by 2030. Generally, Pakistan is amongst the lowest per capita carbon footprints. So the country's per capita carbon footprint emission is 0.98 metric ton per capita, whereas the figure in the India is 1.7, China is 7.5, and USA is 17.5. So we are actually very, very minor and little contributor in terms of this GHG emission and carbon footprint. But having said that, does not mean that we don't need to do anything to actually for the climate change and to improve the environment. Obviously, with this lowest carbon footprint, we are among the 10 worst countries to be hit by the climate change. So that is a target for our country where we need to work, and we need to align our priorities rightly. So government of Pakistan has shown strong commitment towards increasing share of renewable energy. As I said earlier, the 2019 RE policy sets the target of 30% renewable energy by 2030, and which is very ambitious and challenging target, because currently we have only 6% renewable energy. And this renewable is, I would say, by limited definition, wind, solar, and bagasse or biomass. When we add to this hydropower projects, which is also a clean and renewable energy by international standard definition, we want to take this target to 61%. Currently, both three resources, if we add, we are only at 29-30%. So another 30% mean that we'll be adding around 10,000 megawatt of the wind and solar, which is the target of generation expansion plan, and other 13 to 14,000 of hydropower projects. So this is a challenging task in many respects. Mean arranging financing for this kind of expansion, the arrangement of equipment for this, the timeline, the HR capabilities and everything. And in terms of international scenario, what we're seeing, the Ukraine crisis, the COVID, and so many challenges. So the prices are rising up and supplies are constrained. So in this situation, we certainly need, I always say that we certainly need the support from the international community, from the multilateral and from others to finance this kind of initiative, which obviously we cannot do from the local market. So the indicated generation expansion plan approved 2030, as I said, sets the target of 61,000 megawatt, which is currently only 40,000 megawatts. We need to work on that. Similarly, what kind of investment we are looking at? The NPV of investment of around 25 billion in terms of OPEX and CAPEX, we are looking in the next 10 years in terms of for this expansion plan. And on top of that, obviously, we need a huge amount for developing the transmission system and the distribution system for supporting this initiative. Under the NDC, Pakistan has mentioned the targets of 15% emission reduction by 2030 using country's own resources. And in terms of financing, which was saying that 50% reduction is only conditional on the availability of international finance. So we need to work on both ends from raising the local resources and working on local front. But we certainly need the support from the international community to take this emission reduction to 50%. Under the NDC, Pakistan has also identified the market and non-market-based approaches to help diversity and funding resources, including nature performance bond, green, blue bonds, carbon pricing instrument. So none of these exist today. So we need to work obviously on that. And these kind of workshops are obviously very, very helpful and supporting in that respect. The key priority actions for both mitigation and adoption defined in the updated NDC are summarized as 60% shift to clean energy by 2030, which I have already covered, 30% shift to EV by 2030, as Ms. Romina also mentioned, coal moratorium and shelving 2 coal power plants. So Pakistan has already shelved the planned 2 coal power projects, big 2 power projects of 1,320 megawatt each over the last few years, which were on the plan. 10 billion tree tsunami is of course also helpful in terms of avoiding deforestation and improving the environment. For the clean energy transition action mentioned under the NDC, the total required investment is estimated to be $101 billion by 2030 and $165 billion by 2040. And obviously, as it sounds big, for a country like Pakistan, it becomes more challenging to raise this kind of funding to meet the NDC's target. What it includes actually, the 12 gigawatt of renewable energy, which require around 20 billion US dollar. Further expansion of RE, including hydro, would require another 50 billion by 2030 and 80 billion by 2040. To upscale the use of VRE, solar, wind, the transmission network expansion, as I said. So what we are actually doing in terms of doing this, as I said earlier in the PPIB, we are now mostly focusing on the hydropower projects and transmission lines from the private sector. That is the next thing on our agenda. We have so far done only one transmission line in the private sector, which is a big investment of $1.6 billion. This is HVDC transmission line from interior Sindh, Madiari to Lahore. But going forward, because obviously the public sector cannot take the whole burden of financing this large program for transmission system expansion. So we want to invite the private sector to come forward and make investment in the transmission line. And existing policy of 2015 transmission line policy is there, which is being reviewed and improved these days to make it more attractive and aligned for achieving these goals. Similarly, we, in terms of Alternative Energy Development Board, as I said, my other organization, we are gearing up for a large-scale setting up of the generation expansion in the RE. We're targeting about 10,000 megawatt of wind and solar power projects by 2030, for which we will be, inshallah, giving the first advertisement for the competitive bidding and auction next month, which is starting tomorrow, and that will be around 1,500 megawatt capacity. Along with that, we are also reviewing which is at very initial stage, that we want to set up some large solar power plant to reduce the fuel consumption. These plants will actually substitute and reduce the fuel consumption in the daytime when solar is available, and in the peak night time we can run the fuel-based power plant. And we're looking, it's very, very initial, but we are looking at around 5,000 to 6,000 megawatt of additional solar just for this displacement. So we'll be looking for the right sites and where we have to make minimum investment in terms of transmission and network, and this could come earlier. So these are some of the steps on which we are moving in terms of meeting the SDG goals and reducing the GHG emissions. So with this, I stop here. And further, I think one step I missed, that is the competitive trading market, on which as a country we are quite behind. So we are expecting within this year we'll be setting up the wholesale competitive trading market, which will also open opportunity to actually improve the efficiency and reduce the prices. when it comes to the competition. Similarly, another initiative which government started in 2015, that is the net metering or rooftop solar, where the consumer can set up the rooftop solar power plants and they can sell the excess electricity in the daytime to the national grid. This was very slow start in 2015, and there were a lot of complaints that the installers are not providing the quality equipment, quality solar panel. There is no after sales service. So once the system is installed, if it is not working after a few months or a couple of years, nobody attends to them and there is no guarantee and warranty. In this, Alternate Energy Development Board took the initiative in 2018. They set up the certification regulation under which certain parameters were defined, and we actually certify and issue certification to the installers and vendors who can set up these systems. So this was a successful initiative, and learning from the previous experience and in terms of ease of doing business, we have revised these certification regulation last year. So currently we have around 180 certified vendors and installers in the whole country. And what these certification actually achieve, basically, first of all, they set a criteria like the Pakistan Engineering Council does. So we are now relying on the first certification of Pakistan Engineering Council. And based on their certification and their categories, we actually issue the certification from the AEDB side. This certification actually ensures that whatever solar panels or whatever equipment, inverters is being installed, it is of international standards. So some standards have been defined. Then we actually define that what kind of warranties are required for these solar panels and inverters. So vendors has to basically follow and issue these warranties. If there are some after sale problem or there are complaints in installation, we are also attending to those complaints and we are rectifying those. So this is the initiative. And these small system of maybe 2 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, so far they have added up to 400 megawatt. And this number is increasing very rapidly. Initially, the pace was very slow, but now the pace is quite picking up. So much so that we are having complaint that the distribution companies are not able to provide the number of green meters, reverse meters required for this initiative. We are working on that also, that how can we actually address this issue quickly. But this initiative is becoming more and more popular, and the government want to also further incentivize this initiative because obviously it is giving a lot of benefits. There is no government guarantees, there is no government backup and agreement, and this is distributed generation where we actually do not require any transmission network, and the losses of the transmission systems are not there. Although it has constraint and limitation that technically how much one transfer or one transformer or one feeder can absorb in terms of that, on which obviously we have to have some cap, but we want to do it in a big way. So the government main focus is now to come out of the fossil fuels because of the environmental reason, and because of the most recently the reason of increasing fuel prices, which has actually made the power sector unsustainable at this prices. Because if we look at the coal, which was trading around $100 a few months back per ton, now it has increased to $360, $365, and oil, we all know that is trading over $100 per barrel. So with these kind of prices, obviously the financial impact and the foreign exchange drainage is also critical in terms of making the power sector sustainable. With this all initiative, we certainly are geared up to make the ambitious target reality. And for that, these kind of workshop and recommendation and the next step type policy tools which can analyze the result of the policy will certainly be helpful in supporting the government in making the right decision, making the right policies, and reaching to the objective which we are setting. Thank you very much for your hearing.
Thank you so much, Shahjahan Saab, for the great intervention and also highlighting some of the key initiatives that government of Pakistan is taking, and also the ones that are in pipeline, which are very motivating to see how we are taking a leap towards clean energy transition in Pakistan. Also to highlight that This project, this roadmap is being developed under the program of STPI on clean energy transition, under which we have a network for clean energy transition with the representation from over 670 to 80 stakeholders, including public, private, academia, CSOs, international partners. And this initiative is one of the example that we have collaborated on this SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan to meet the objectives and to support the country to meet the goals. Moving on, I would like to request Mr. Sergey from United Nations Economic Social Commission of Asia Pacific for his keynote address. He's representing the Economic Affairs Division from UNESCAP, the Chief of Energy Division at the UNESCAP Bangkok. So thank you so much, Sergey, for joining. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear me and you can see me. I really like to thank Ms. Rumina Hashi, the member of Parliamentary Task Force for Sustainable Development, for her really inspiring welcome remarks. Also, many thanks to Mr. Sean Mirza, Managing Director of PPIB, for his introductory speech. This is my really great pleasure to deliver welcome remarks on behalf of UNESCAP. Ladies and gentlemen, I really happy to join you even virtually in this inception workshop on the development of the SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan. Hope you are keeping safe and in a good health. COVID-19 pandemic and its unprecedented effects on human development are a wake-up call to the potential consequences for people's well-being from the relentless pressure we're placing on nature and the planet. It also has a great impact on the global economy and presents profound challenges for the energy sector. It has never been more important to talk about mitigating the climate change impacts through transitioning the energy sector along the line of green recovery and building forward better in the time of COVID-19. Energy is the key enabler for all development and is the cornerstone to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which strive to leave no one behind. The economic contraction due to the COVID-19 pandemic reinforces the importance of energy in bringing back the economic growth on track and achieving global goals and targets. Achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement by transitioning the energy sector presents a complex and difficult task for policymakers. The transition needs to ensure sustained economic growth, respond to increasing energy demand, reduce emissions, and consider and capitalize on the interlinkages between SDG7 and other SDGs. This requires an integrated system approach by considering the synergies between its constituent elements, such as increasing access to modern energy services, increasing the share of renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and last but not least, reducing emissions from the energy sector. Each of these actions has an impact on others. Therefore, a system optimization process is needed to identify the best available pathway to the energy system we need by 2030. Such an energy transition requires skills and expertise that differ from the knowledge of conventional energy planning that policymakers have been doing in the past. United Nations ESCAP undertook an in-depth assessment in 2018 and has developed a framework to support member states in transitioning the energy sector to achieve SDG7 targets in conjunction with NDCs under the Paris Agreement. At the second Asia Pacific Forum held in 2018 and the second session of the ESCAP Committee on Energy Colleagues, I think that was some disconnection. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Colleagues,
can. Please carry on.
Yeah, okay. So I'm very sorry. Yeah, I cut out for a second, so I'll continue. So ESCAP recognizes that roadmap development should be a country-led process where countries take full ownership of their roadmaps instead of being developed by external parties. The roadmap development process needs to involve all stakeholders. It should be harmonized and coordinated with the existing national energy strategies and plans. To this end, UNESCAP has developed an integrated energy planning tool, National Expert SDG Tool for Energy Planning. The abbreviation is Next Step, that helps policymakers develop their roadmaps. Further details of Next Step, including how it works and how a roadmap could be useful for Pakistan, will be shared by my colleague Anis Zaman later in this workshop. I'm very pleased that Pakistan has joined the Next Step initiative. I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to the Private Power Infrastructure Board, particularly the leadership of Managing Director, Mr. Shan Mirza, for the excellent support and collaboration with this new initiative in the development of National SDG7 Roadmap for Pakistan. I have noted that PPIB has been demonstrating a strong commitment by establishing a working group to facilitate the roadmap development process. With the assistance from our national consultant, SDPI, the data collection is also progressing very well. The collected data is an important basis for scenario development. We are confident that with the support from PPIB, SDPI, and input from other agencies, the SDG7 roadmap will provide valuable and tangible recommendations for Pakistan's future energy planning and sustainable development. The ultimate success of this initiative will see the recommendations from the roadmap being incorporated into plans and policies in the energy sector. UNESCAP would be willing to discuss further on how to implement the recommendations once the SDG7 roadmap is developed. As such, I look forward to continuing this collaboration to contribute to Pakistan's energy transition for sustainable development. I thank you all, and I wish you very fruitful discussion and a productive day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sergey, for your special remarks. Now I would like to move on to Mr. Dr. Sardar Mozam, who is the Managing Director of National Energy Conservation Authority. Talking about SDG7 roadmap, and energy conservation is one of the key pillars that we are going to pursue. So, Dr. Mozam, I would like to request the IT team to kindly put his presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you very much to SDPI, UNESCAP, and PPIB for giving me an opportunity to present energy efficiency and conservation, the unrealized opportunity in the context of Pakistan. And I think thanks to all the participants and the guests sitting here for their time and listening to a lot of interesting stuff that we have today to present. This is just a last minute thing that I have prepared some presentation, and I just thought like it may be more, it may leave more imprints when it will be presented through slides rather than just discussing them. I'll start with just one thing, especially that in the current context, when we talk about energy in the country's context, I think one of the aspects that we are generally missing is that we always discuss power. and the overall energy context is missing. So I think it's important that whenever we take this topic further, overall energy is also should be incorporated in some of these sections. So this is my suggestion to SDPI and PPIB that something from the gas sector or from the other sectors should also be incorporated. Second, I think I'll start with this just one simple line that energy is no longer merely a cost to be managed. Because a lot of the times when I was working with some UN and donor agencies working to Pakistan, I think one of the challenges which I've always seen, what is the solution, how to manage the tariff? And we just play with the tariff and without addressing the root causes, we always come up with some new tariff regime, some new solutions, and then we got stuck. One important thing which I just want to make a point here is with this, what is my understanding of SDGs? I think SDG7, when it comes to SDG7, the first thing to me is how we set primarily the energy access goals, like how much the access we have. I think irrespective of what source this energy comes from, access is the top priority for any country in the world. The second point is then once you ensure the access, important aspect is where this energy sources, where this energy should come from. And that's what we always think of renewable energy. I think the third point in SDGs is energy efficiency. But the challenge, what we feel here is energy efficiency is considered as a first fuel. It's the gigawatts. So saving 1 unit of energy is always cheaper than producing 1 unit of energy. So I think globally, that discussion we have seen, the ideas that has been prevailing, the system, how they have been designed, the important thing that has always been observed, that before adding a single unit, there is always this comprehensive analysis. Can we save it? Can we save through energy efficiency and conservation? Can we do some demand side management and save this? So I think overall, instead of just cost to be managed, it's important that how demand side management can play its role. So I'll start with this. It's a quick presentation, which I just wanted to present. I think in most of the documents, in most of the times, energy efficiency has not got a priority in the national agenda whenever we talk about energy efficiency. And that is very important, that how we are dealing with the subject from quite some time. And I think that's what we have tried in the last 2 years, because earlier this was most of this functional institution where things were not in place and we were facing a lot of challenges in terms of HR, in terms of financial resources, in terms of policy, in terms of overall institutionalization of energy efficiency in Pakistan. I think there were challenges. So this is something we have been trying to do from some time, and then how we can go forward with that. So this is just a very simple idea, which I was just trying to highlight. There's some old data sets available. So I've analyzed based on some reverse engineering on these data sets, like what is the Pakistan primary energy supply, which is currently 83, but as of the Energy Yearbook 2019, 88.25 million tons of oil equivalent. So this is the primary energy supply of the country at the cost of 3.7 trillion. This is the numbers from 2017-18. So what is the total budgetary outlay? So if you look at the total budgetary outlay, which was 5.9 trillion, out of which 3.7, half of it goes to the energy. So half of the budgetary outlay go to this overall energy sector. What is the power share in that? 1.25 trillion. That goes to the electricity. So imagine that half of it, even more than that, we just discuss the electricity part. What about the rest? So half of it is still missing. This is, I think, another point which I was trying to highlight, like saving 1% or reduction of 1.1% is somewhere around 0.8825 MTOE. And that costs 36 billion. 1 unit is equal to that 36 billion. With just 4 billion or 5 billion, we can save 36.8 billion. Now, the question is, what is the saving potential of this country, which is more than 10 to 15% or million tons of oil equivalent? So the question is how much we can save. This is a very simple answer, that with energy efficiency and conservation part, we can have 15%. And if we multiply it, this is more than 360 billion. So this is important thing that I just wanted to highlight, like what is actually means when we talk about energy efficiency. And I think this graph explains something very important to us, that primary energy consumption per capita and primary energy intensity. I think this also is a very important thing to understand, that energy intensity, how we explain the energy intensity of 1 unit of GDP produced with the amount of energy we consume on that. So any single, say for example, this is 1 unit of GDP, how much energy went to produce this? I think this gives us the sense, like this is the intensity, how much intense in terms of energy efficiency in this country. And this is where you see the country Pakistan on this graph as well. In both these contexts, we don't want to say that consumption should reduce. This is not, I think this is not the question of reducing the consumption. The question is how we can reduce our intensity. If we increase the consumption, the GDP should grow, as in case of United States, as in case of all these high income countries. If you look at that, the energy consumption, primary energy consumption per capita of these countries is higher. But then the next question is where they stand in terms of intensity. That is the question mark. So this is where we are as of right now. And as we go, as we are planning right now, this is where we will be standing. We will be more energy intense, we will be more expensive, and we will be less competitive globally. So where we want to be? I think this is if we have to increase the primary energy consumption per capita. And at the same time, if we reduce our energy intensity, we will grow in terms of our GDP size, and we will be using less of energy. So I'll just highlight that how historically we will be dealing with this institution and what are the challenges that we are facing as of right now. And I think this will also set us an example, like why institution matters, and then how we deal with them and where we go with that kind of idea. So this is a very simple transition of Enercon to NECA. And I think we are not new to energy efficiency in this country. If you look at it, in 1985, USAID started this project with Enercon and Enerplan. And then over the years, especially in 1993, 1996, 1997, 2011, and now in 2021, 22, it has been transferred after some time that the institution which was trying to be built and then was transferred. So this institutional strength, which you just work with at some level, remains in turbulence, like how you can manage this institution and take forward to that. So I think this is also a very important question, like overall, in all these years, we have been struggling with this institution from 1985 till 2022, that how these things can be managed. So NECA has, as per NECA's Act, as a federal agency for initiating, catalyzing, and coordinating all the energy efficiency and conservation activities. However, there are 5 key sectors: power sector, transport, building, industry, agriculture, and there are further details to it. So these are some of the functions as per the NECA Act. And I think this provides us a lot more space, that where are the areas, how we can work. And I think what I'm trying to do right now is sort of addressing the awareness campaign and sort of building some awareness at this level. I will be in upcoming slides slightly show you the policy draft which has been prepared. And some of the programs that we have been working recently, along with the legal and financial instruments which we are trying to develop, or some of them has already been developed. And some of the transactions that has been completed, that also plays an important role as per the NICA Act. So I'll just, these few slides I'll be skipping because, so this is important thing that which NICA revitalization process started. I think the first thing which I really want to highlight that this is the overall development of the policy, and then the NICA policies is just a bit I really wanted to highlight in this forum, that this policy has been discussed at different forums, and then this policy is draft is available, and we are in process of getting it approved. I think some of the important things recently has been that this energy efficiency and conservation has been extensively covered in National Electricity Policy and then in an electricity plan. And I think these are some of the key areas which has been highlighted in this slide, especially regarding to the regulatory framework, sectoral policies, minimum energy performance standards, and energy audits is also some of the important areas where we are being working. I must say that ESCO market development is also one of the key areas where we have been extensively working, and also this will be clubbed with the energy, renewable energy part as well. So there are some sectoral initiatives. I think the first thing is that we prepared a strategic plan with the setting of 3 MTOE goals. And among all these sectors, buildings, transport, industry, agriculture, and power, there were some of the initiatives that has been worked extensively. And there are these activities being presented that how we have been effectively working on captive power plants audits and then the whole regime around it. There has been extensive work on the capacity building policy and regulations. And then there has been some donor projects which we have worked, and then approval of some PSTPs recently. Why am I highlighting it? I think it's important that you start with some institution in just 2 years' time. There are a set of activities that has been performed earlier when there was no staff, there was no professional human resource, no budget or no funding available with that. So I think there are further details to it, but I think some of these important aspects which I really wanted to highlight here is that how we have been in the absence, what has been done. I mean, there are things that has not been done, and I think this is one thing that we have been trying to build up, especially with this captive energy audit of captive power plants. Out of the total, somewhere around 650. In the last winter, we stopped supplying them gas. I think this is also what we have planned, that we will be conducting energy audits for all of these power plants, which consumes a total gas consumption of 124 billion cubic feet of gas in the country. Another important thing that we have already completed is the minimum energy performance standards for 5 appliances: fans, LED lights, motors, air conditioners, and refrigerators. I think this is also a very important thing for us, as we have calculated that this provides a huge potential for energy saving in the country. All these appliances, especially in buildings, in industry, in all these sectors, consumes a major share of energy. I think we have already been we have launched this fan labeling regime under which we have experimented all this. And I think this is one of the real-time data that we have mapped, that where are these labeled fans are being sold in the country. We have already got approval from the board, and we are waiting for further approvals from the cabinet about the appliances regulations. I think just looking at the fans, LEDs, air conditioners, incandescent bulbs that we are using in the rural sector, our motors and refrigerators, all of them are consuming this much of energy, and most of them are inefficient. So bringing efficiency in this sector without any efforts will provide us more than 5,000 megawatts in energy saving. So we already have this PSDP's projects, and some of these projects we are already working with the donor agencies, where we have been working on buildings, renewable energy efficiency project with NAMA, with decarbonization of textile sectors. Also, we have been successfully completed renewable hydrogen as pre-feasibility, and charging stations with e-mobility in some of these sectors. So we are still working on approval of the policy. I think this is important for us. And one more important thing is that how we are looking forward. What are the areas where the market, where the data, where a lot of the efforts, where are the action plans will be working in the future. So I think one of the key areas is the audit of public buildings, and then the retrofitting and energy efficiency and renewable energy. Activation of green building guidelines for energy efficiency and conservation. There is a big sort of interesting area of designated consumers, certified energy auditors and managers regime, which can definitely provide, open up huge job opportunities. Some of the provincial designated agencies to be established along with the Energy Conservation Tribunal. And I think energy efficiency and conservation building codes is one of the key areas where we see a lot more potential to do with that. With this, thank you very much. I think this is also a forum. I would like your more comments, suggestions, if you want to share with us on NECA website or in other ways. We will be more than happy to incorporate in the policy draft and in other documents as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sardar. We highly appreciate your valuable time and to express the need of energy conservation for Pakistan's energy plans and policies and how it can play a vital role in this energy transition. Moving on, and in the interest of time, I would like to quickly move on to our another keynote speech by Mr. Zulfikar Ali, who is the Director General of Reforms Policy and Legal, Board of Investment.
Assalamu alaikum, dear colleagues from government and academia and worthy members from the private sector, very good day to all of you, sir. I'm very pleased to be a part of this inception workshop. This is very good initiative by Ministry of Energy, PPIB, and the support from the UNESCAP is commendable. I would also appreciate the efforts of SDPI to bring all stakeholders together here today. Ladies and gentlemen, renewable energy will have many benefits, including cheap, improved, and independent energy supply and reduced environmental pollution. The adoption of EV policy is also a step in the right direction. Giving incentives and tax relaxations will also help attract FDI in the renewable energy sector. Similarly, the Alternative and Renewable Energy Policy 2020, with an objective to increase the share of ARE to 20% by 2025 and 30% by 2030, is also a target well aligned with SDG7. The heavy reliance on fossil fuel imports for electricity generation is impacting the current account deficit, with the domestic energy demand not slowing down, thus causing a balance of payment issue. Ladies and gentlemen, you must have remembered that in the last decade, Pakistan witnessed a major increase in the frequency and intensity of power outages in domestic sector in general, and in particular in the industrial sector. We have also seen during the course of these years complaints by the various Chamber of Commerce and Industries and other industrial associations in the country that the level of production in a number of industries have been reduced due to the persistence of outages, which apparently had fundamentally disturbed the normal rhythm of the production cycle in a large number of industrial units, especially in electricity intensive sectors like textiles, non-metallic minerals, products, basic metals, leather products, rubber and plastic products, paper and paper products, etc. Development of an effective roadmap is very important to steer towards successful achievement of targets of SDG7. We will be having detailed discussions on energy and power sector plans and policies of the government of Pakistan with regards to the government's approach towards energy sector. The sector is open for investment. In any sector of the economy, sustainable investment is essential for growth of that sector. For this, a country needs an investment-friendly regime. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what BOI is focused at. I would like to highlight a few noteworthy points before this esteemed gathering. First, power and energy sector has remained a priority for investment in the country. Second, there are 22 notified special economic zones in Pakistan which are open to investments in all sectors, including setting up captive power plants in these zones. Third, BOE has been carrying out reforms for business climate improvement with all departments and governments to ensure process, time, and cost can be reduced. A number of energy sector reforms have also been carried out, which include reduction in time for getting category 3 electricity connection. For your interest, in Karachi, we have been able to reduce the connection application from 134 days to 58 days, including quicker wiring inspection by Energy Department Sindh. And in Lahore, we have reduced 73 days to 58 days. As far as reduction of cost of fresh connections are concerned, in Karachi, we have been able to reduce from 2.7 million rupees to 1.7 million rupees, and in Lahore from again 2.7 million to only 0.9 million rupees. We have also established mechanism for advanced communication of change in tariff and online system of filing application for electricity connections with internal tracking system is in place at the moment now. The regulatory landscape of the Pakistan is very cumbersome and businesses and investors are reluctant to invest in the country. Non-availability of information regarding regulatory requirements, absence of digital means for application, submission, and tracking system are basic hurdles that discourage investors. BOE has also facilitated many reforms relating to promote solar power generation, installation, and net metering in coordination with NEPRA and AEDB. Some of these reforms are NEPRA license eliminated for solar net metering up to 25 kW. Then requirement of normal 3-phase electric meter eliminated for net metering facility. Elimination of excessive warranty requirements for solar generation system. Regulatory framework simplified for small and medium installation of solar panels. We have also facilitated solar installation companies by enhancing certification validity to 3 years. And we also prescribe procedures and timelines for change of owners, sanction load, and other details regarding net metering. These reforms could not have been possible without support of regulators. However, there is still room for improvement and regulators need to be proactive, keeping in view of the rapid changing technology and take lead in modernizing their regulatory frameworks. Having said this, let me conclude this by saying that without the active engagement of government, academia, and development partners, we cannot make the leap jump we are aiming at. To achieve our goals, we need a strategic collaboration between the stakeholders where we can share knowledge, exchange skills and experience while continuously learning from each other. The workshop is one of these steps in the right direction, and I am very much hopeful that the roadmap we develop in subsequent sessions will pave the way to achievements of targets under SDG7. Taking this opportunity, I offer my full support and assistance to PPIB and AEDB to facilitate all investment, which they have already indicated and in a speech by Mirza Saab, and that we are open to facilitate all the investors and ready to pitch all the investment projects to the potential investor here in Pakistan and all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zulfikar Saab. And this comes to the end of the first session of the keynote addresses. And we are extremely thankful for the valuable remarks that have been shared by each one of our esteemed panelists and guests, and enriched us with the current policies, with the current scenarios, and how this is crucial for the energy transition, and how this will help to achieve the SDG7 roadmap for Pakistan. With this, I would like to quickly request MD Shahjahan Mirza Sahab. We have small souvenirs for you and also for the guests, and a group photo before we turn on to a short coffee break, and we come back for the other technical presentations, which will be presented just right after. So for the break, I would request to come back after 10 minutes. May I request the team to bring in the shield from Mr. Shahjahan? And photographer, please. Okay, sorry. Then I would like to request Shahjahan Saab to kindly proceed with giving shields to the other members. So, for and Dr. Sardar Moazin from NICA. May I also request Faisal, Director, Project Appraisal, PPIB, to please. Yes. And myself. So thank you to all the guests who have joined us for the first session. And please stay with us for the next session, where we will have really good technical presentations from several sectors, including industrial, transport. And also we will be moving to lunch afterwards. And after lunch, we'll be breaking out into working groups. Thank you.
just like to say that, this Energy Transition Council that we are starting over here is something which is totally aligned with the government's current priorities.
It is beyond doubt a very good initiative by SDPI to actually get together the people from the field, the practitioner and I would say the academic.
Independently have research on, and I think with the research and advocacy pillars that the network is trying to build in, it has to be participatory, it has to be inclusive, it has to be independent, and it has to be critical.
Seminars like this give us an opportunity to find ways and means where we can jumpstart this process.
Is around clean energy in the form of electricity. I would also want to stress on clean energy in the form of industrial processes, which needs to be catered into the scope of the work that we are doing under this network.
That a lot of close coordination is required between all the different entities of the GOP.
In case of Pakistan, I think there is this additional incentive and motivation for people to transit to renewable energy, and that additional motive is an energy circular debt.
Industrial decarbonization is one of the key areas that we will be working on. And just like you said, industrial processes, some of the hard-to-abate sectors in Pakistan that really needs decarbonization.
A country like Pakistan is not only meeting the one challenge, but it's going beyond with the 10 million.
And that it's very important for us as a country also to transition to cleaner energy.
So interventions required maybe shifting investments towards RE, energy efficiency measures, and prioritizing the field-to-field technology.
But if you want things going, it has to be something bankable where people who invest in renewable, companies invest in renewable, are able to make money. And when they compare it with fossil fuel investments, so it shouldn't be just because of good omen. It has to be more than that.
When it comes to interaction with the government, it's extremely important that what government is offering to the private sector.
Moreover, a 1.5 degree centigrade compatible pathway would require that Pakistan reach full decarbonization of its power sector between 2036 to 2038.
So what is the local solution that can be developed here? And this is very important, I think. And the role of academia can play the part of the solution, can be part of the solution.
Count that there must be a structured accounting mechanism for the emissions. So how the companies have to account that all.
A lot of these private sector institutions have actually exhausted the kind of solar space that they can build, and they're looking towards more wheeling mechanisms and things like policy incentives such as that to actually enable that transition.
Why they're not getting investment is a gap, and the gap is the feasibilities.
I think we should have a strong technology transfer in the renewable energy.
For an EV to be utilized by the general public, you have to build the infrastructure.
Also work on something called carbon negative energy generation.
We don't have a manufacturing unit as yet.
How many of us really think that 10 distribution companies are a going concern?
Just to make it more, the distribution companies more localized, I think that's an area that the government kind of need to kind of give them flexibility to get into power generation so that they can reduce their basket price.
Another thing that's very critical is to have a data repository where you actually put all the information together, and which would be the quantification of how to measure, having proper accounting.
For a long time, what has been missing from the Pakistan's development sector planning, like many other public policy problems, similarly in the energy sector, it has been the lack of evidence-based policy design. We need to see COVID-19 as an opportunity to bring back the SDGs on track in a timely, efficient manner.
just like to say that this energy transition council that we are starting over here is something which is totally aligned with the government's current priorities.
It is beyond doubt a very good initiative by SDPI to actually get together the people from the field, the practitioner and I would say the academic.
Independently have research on, and I think with the research and advocacy pillars that the network is trying to build in, it has to be participatory, it has to be inclusive, it has to be independent, and it has to be critical.
Seminars like this give us an opportunity to find ways and means where we can jumpstart this process.
Is around clean energy in the form of electricity. I would also want to stress on clean energy in the form of industrial processes, which needs to be catered into the scope of the work that we are doing under this network.
That a lot of close coordination is required between all the different entities of the GOP.
In case of Pakistan, I think there is this additional incentive and motivation for people to transit to renewable energy, and that additional motive is an energy circular debt.
Industrial decarbonization is one of the key areas that we will be working on, and just like you said, industrial processes, some of the hard to abate sectors in Pakistan that really needs decarbonization.
A country like Pakistan is not only meeting the bond challenge, but it's going beyond with the 10 million.
And that it's very important for us as a country also to transition to cleaner energy.
So interventions require maybe shifting investments towards RE, energy efficiency measures, and prioritizing the field technology.
But if you want things going, it has to be something bankable where people who invest in renewable, companies investors are able to make money. And when they compare it with fossil fuel investments, so it shouldn't be just because of good omen. It has to be more than that.
When it comes to interaction with the government, it's extremely important that what government is offering to the private sector.
Moreover, a 1.5 degree centigrade compatible pathway would require that Pakistan reach full decarbonization of its power sector between 2036 to 2038.
So what is the local solution that can be developed here? And this is very important, I think. And the role of academia can play the part of the solution, can be part of the solution.
Count that there must be a structured accounting mechanism for the emissions. So how the companies have to account that all.
A lot of these private sector institutions have actually exhausted the kind of solar space that they can build, and they're looking towards more wheeling mechanisms and things like policy incentives such as that to actually enable that transition.
Why they're not getting investment is a gap, and the gap is the feasibilities.
I think we should have a strong technology transfer in the renewable energy.
For an EV to be utilized by the general public, you have to build the infrastructure.
Also work on something called carbon negative energy generation.
We don't have a manufacturing unit as yet.
How many of us really think that 10 distribution companies are a going concern?
Just to make it more, the distribution companies more localized, I think that's an area that the government kind of need to give them flexibility to get into power generation so that they can reduce their basket price.
Another thing that's very critical is to have a data repository where you actually put all the information together, and which would be the quantification of how to measure, having proper accounting.
For a long time, what has been missing from the Pakistan's development sector planning, like many other public policy problems, similarly in the energy sector, it has been the lack of evidence-based policy design.
We need to see COVID-19 as an opportunity to bring back the SDGs on track in a timely, efficient manner.
Just like to say that, this Energy Transition Council that we are starting over here is something which is totally aligned with the government's current priorities.
It is beyond doubt a very good initiative by SDPI to actually get together the people from the field, the practitioner and I would say the academic.
Independently have research on, and I think with the research and advocacy pillars that the network is trying to build in, it has to be participatory, it has to be inclusive, it has to be independent, and it has to be critical.
Seminars like this give us an opportunity to find ways and means where we can jumpstart this process.
Is around clean energy in the form of electricity. I would also want to stress on clean energy in the form of industrial processes, which needs to be catered into the scope of the work that we are doing under this network.
That a lot of close coordination is required between all the different entities of the GOP.
In case of Pakistan, I think there is this additional incentive and motivation for people to transit to renewable energy. And that additional motive is an energy circular debt.
Industrial decarbonization is one of the key areas that we will be working on. And just like you said, industrial processes, some of the hard to abate sectors in Pakistan that really needs decarbonization.
A country like Pakistan is not only meeting the bond challenge, but it's going beyond with the 10 billion.
And that it's very important for us as a country also to transition to cleaner energy.
So interventions require maybe shifting investments towards RE, energy efficiency measures, and prioritizing the field within technology.
But if you want things going, it has to be something bankable where people who invest in renewable, companies invest in renewable, are able to make money. And when they compare it with fossil fuel investments, so it shouldn't be just because of good omen. It has to be more than that.
When it comes to interaction with the government, it's extremely important that what government is offering to the private sector.
Moreover, a 1.5 degree centigrade compatible pathway would require that Pakistan reach full decarbonization of its power sector between 2036 to 2038.
So what is the local solution that can be developed here? And this is very important, I think. And the role of academia can play the part of the solution, can be part of the solution.
Count that there must be a structured accounting mechanism for the emissions. So how the companies have to account at all.
And they're looking towards more wheeling mechanisms and things like policy incentives such as that to actually enable that transition.
Why they're not getting investment is a gap, and the gap is the feasibilities.
I think we should have a strong technology transfer in the renewable energy.
For an EV to be utilized by the general public, you have to build the infrastructure.
Also work on something called carbon negative energy generation.
We don't have a manufacturing unit as yet.
How many of us really think that 10 distribution companies are a going concern?
Just to make it more, the distribution companies more localized, I think that's an area that the government kind of give them flexibility to get into power generation so that they can reduce their basket price.
Another thing that's very critical is to have a data repository where you actually put all the information together and which would be the quantification of how to measure, having proper accounting.
For a long time, what has been missing from the Pakistan's development sector planning, like many other public policy problems, similarly in the energy sector, it has been the lack of evidence-based policy design.
We need to see COVID-19 as an opportunity to bring back the SDGs on track in a timely, efficient manner.
Just like to say that this energy transition council that we are starting over here is something which is totally aligned with the government's current priorities.
It is beyond doubt a very good initiative by SDPI to actually get together the people from the field, the practitioner and I would say the academic.
Independently have research on, and I think with the research and advocacy pillars that the network is trying to build in, it has to be participatory, it has to be inclusive, it has to be independent, and it has to be critical.
I request you all to be seated now. You can bring your coffee back to the tables. So we may begin the next session, which needs to be taken place within an hour before we break out for the lunch.
The scope of the work that we're doing under this network, that a lot of close coordination is required between all the different entities of the GOP.
In case of Pakistan, I think there is this additional incentive and motivation for people to transit to renewable energy. And that additional motive is an energy circular debt.
Industrial decarbonization is one of the key areas that we will be working on. Just like you said, industrial processes, some of the next presenters to please come on the stage. Mr. Talha Khan, Dr. Nadia, and Mr. Masroor Ahmed. Could you please? Yes.
But one thing going, it has to be something bankable where
Just a second.
you invest in renewable companies are able to make money. And when they compare it with fossil fuel investments, so it should be just because it has to be more than that.
When it comes to interaction with the government, it's extremely important that what government is offering to the private sector.
May I request Faisal to please come up on the stage?
Full decarbonization of its power sector between 2036 to 2030.
So what is the local solution that can
We are formally beginning the next session, which is on technical presentations. To begin with, I would like to give a floor to Mr. Anis Saman, who is an associate professor at Murdoch University, Australia, and he's also been working on the next step model with UNESCAP. He will give an introduction to the model and SDG7 roadmap for the development for Pakistan. So he's online with us. Anis, can you hear us?
Yes, Hina, I can hear you very well, loud and clear.
Perfect. May I request the IT team to increase the volume? Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Thank you. Hina, can you confirm if you can see my slides?
Yes, we can see the presentation. Please proceed.
Thank you. Distinguished participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome from SCAP. I think you have been listening to all these keynote speeches in the first session before the tea break. We are running a little bit behind, so I won't be taking a lot of time. I'll try to cut short as much as I can, although I have a couple of slides, but we'll probably flick through some of them very quickly if they're not really highly relevant. But you will also get the slides, a copy of this whole slide deck after the workshop. So if you have any question, please reach out to me. So my name is Anis Zaman. I'm working with UNESCAP and particularly leading this SDG7 roadmap development process. In this presentation, I would like to introduce you to the SDG7 roadmap, what it is, how this is developed, and how it helps the country. We also will talk briefly about the next step methodology and what is the sort of results that we would expect out of it. And finally, I will also discuss about the content of the roadmap, what are the chapters and what are the basic information that we will outline in this presentation, in this roadmap. So before we move ahead, I think it's better to just refresh our minds on the SDG7 goal, its targets and indicators. I'm sure all of you very well know this, but I think it would be good to recap on this. So we have basically three major targets: universal access to energy, renewable energy, and also energy efficiency. But I would like to draw your attention to the indicators for measurement. So for universal access to energy, we have two indicators. One is indicating to the access to electricity. The second one is access to clean cooking fuels. The second target is renewable energy, which is really mentioning that increasing the share of renewable energy in the final energy consumption. This is the, as you can see, the word in bold, it is final energy consumption. So we have to remember this, it is not the electricity only we are talking about. I remember in the earlier presentation by Dr. Moachem, he particularly mentioned that we always talk about electricity, but it's time that we do an entire energy planning where all sorts of energy is included. The third target is about doubling the energy efficiency improvement rate. So basically, it has been already mentioned in earlier presentations that we measure this through energy intensity. Now, coming to the fact that there are a lot of links among the targets and indicators. Basically, if we look at access to electricity, access to clean cooking fuel, the technology that we consider in achieving these access, that will influence the share of renewable energy in the system. Also, if we increase the energy efficiency, I think you will very well understand that that also increases the share of renewable energy. So there are multiple links in between and among all the targets and indicators. On top of that, we have also emission reduction, and why it is included in here, because more than 2/3 of emissions come from the energy sector. So without considering the emission reduction, it won't be possible to do a justice to the energy planning for the energy transition. We also have a number of drivers and factors that we'll need to consider, including the economics, demographics, energy security, what is the resources available in the country. I think earlier speakers mentioned about several hydro resources, solar and wind, all are available there. I'm not talking about the fossil fuel because we are trying to make a clean energy transition. And finally, of course, we have to look at the economic feasibility of any particular pathway that we would like to take. So considering all these things, ESCAP developed this particular tool, or I would say framework, which is the National Expert SDG tool for energy planning. And that's because to take account that integrated links to all these targets and indicators and also emission reduction. This tool actually helps to develop policy decision or support the policy decision of policymakers for the sustainable energy transition. That is a very quick glimpse of the next step methodology. So basically, we have divided the whole methodology into 3 main sections. The first section undertakes energy and emissions modeling, and we use LEAP, which is low emission analysis platform, and that is widely used in this region, particularly in South Asia, and I'm sure it is also used widely in Pakistan. This requires huge amount of data, so we'll talk about the data later. The second step is the economic analysis of the scenarios that we developed through the first step. And in the third step, we undertake scenario analysis to come up with the policy recommendations. The unique feature of this particular methodology or the framework is that it is based on the backcasting approach. And why backcasting approach is necessary? Because for SDG7, all the targets are set. So we have to reach certain targets by 2030. So we need to actually work our way backwards to the present days to see what is the basic or the most suitable pathway to reach to 2030. So I'll go through the component, these 3 components very quickly. So as I mentioned, energy and emissions modeling is undertaken. In the first component, we develop different scenarios, and of course, we focus on least cost optimization. In the second component, we undertake economic analysis. There are huge amount of different diverse kind of economic analysis we undertake, including feasibility of fuel switching, and also wherever is necessary and possible, we also consider examine the possibility of a special power purchase agreement and also renewable energy auction where it is suitable and eligible. In the third component, we apply multi-criteria decision analysis tool. This is not new to you all. You very well know this. It is widely used for decision-making purpose in both public and private sector. So just a quick recap on the Pakistan status of these targets. In relation to these targets, we have just got some initial information. I think we are correct, but if there are some updated numbers, we are happy to take those into account. So access to electricity is sitting at the moment at 75%. So that means that a quarter of population still do not have access to electricity, or I would say grid electricity particularly. There might be some sort of other types of electricity access, but when it comes to grid electricity, it's only 75%. Access to clean cooking fuel, it has improved significantly over the last decade or so. So it was, I think in 2000, it was 24%, which has increased to about 50% by 2018. So, but if you look at the rate that we all have to achieve by 2030 is 100%. So still half of the population will need to give an access to this clean cooking fuels and technologies. Renewable energy share. So here are two different things. We need to understand it. So one is renewable energy share in electricity, and the other one is renewable energy share in total final energy consumption. When you look at renewable energy share in electricity in 2021, it was 34%. But when it comes to the total final energy consumption, the share drops down to 7.5%. And this is the target that we have from SDG7. So that means we have to significantly improve this 7.5%. There is no particular numerical number to this target, but we have to make our decision what is substantial that we can check through the SDG7 roadmap development process. Energy efficiency, I think Dr. Moajam has already provided a lot of information on this. The energy efficiency in Pakistan, energy intensity, particularly the indicator through which the energy efficiency is measured, has declined to some extent. So it's starting from 5.7 megajoule per dollar in 1990, it has dropped to 5 megajoule per dollar in 2020. So we can see that the rate of improvement hasn't been that far, but it has dropped to some extent. If we consider the target for energy efficiency under the SDG7 framework, then it looks like that this energy efficiency, energy intensity will need to drop to 4 megajoule per dollar by 2030, which is a 1.1% improvement per year. Now, that's for that's the doubling. But if we look at the global improvement rate, which is also a target, is highly encouraged by SDG7. So if we want to align with the global improvement rate of energy efficiency, then it will need to drop to further 3.2 megajoule per US dollar by 2030. So that's a decision I will make through participatory and consultative process, which one to go for. So through this, we'll be getting some scenarios. So starting with business as usual, which is a baseline scenario, we'll develop the scenario based on current policy settings. And then we'll also develop a SDG scenario, which is basic scenario to be able to achieve SDG7 targets. Further, if it is possible and if it is also desired by stakeholders, we'll also work on some ambitious scenarios. Now, just to give you an ambitious scenario, we can work on different aspects, including decarbonization of the power sector or moving towards net zero. Net zero probably by 2030 is a big ask. We can actually extend the timeline for net zero to 2050. So those sort of analysis and scenario development would be possible. We'll identify suitable technologies and prioritize them in different scenarios. We'll suggest some policy options. We'll also provide information on the marginal abatement cost curve, which is a very strong tool for making decision in terms of the emission reduction. We'll provide Pakistan-based information-oriented levelized cost of electricity. So it is not a general or regional or global LCOE. Will provide and calculate very specific local-based LCOE. And of course, we'll have some reporting options there. Here is the online portal. So what we get in addition to the SDG7 roadmap document, it's a very nicely designed one, but this is also an online portal where all the information for Pakistan SDG7 roadmap development will be there, including recommendations, and there will be different login passwords, or you can also emails or want to make them public if necessary. We have also different capacity building elements. So we'll provide a training program for the participants that are chosen by the focal point, PPBI, PPIB, and SDPI. And we also have online training module. Anyone can access that. We also have a huge database, a very rich database of different energy efficient appliances, their energy consumption, life cycle cost, and all those. So those are also available to the stakeholders. So what are the things that are involved in this process? We start with engagement that we have already done. We undertake an inception workshop, which we are doing today. And the data collection, I think data collection has already progressed to some extent. Once we get the data in our hand, we undertake modeling. Once the modeling and some scenarios are developed, we go for stakeholder consultation to get involved, to get comments and suggestion and guidance on those results and findings. It is followed by a capacity building activity, and then we draft the roadmap. Once the roadmap is drafted, we send it for review and comments. And once all the comments are incorporated and nationally accepted, we finalize the roadmap and organize a public official launch event. Just a structure. So we have some introductory chapters, then we provide overview of the energy sector of the country, SDG7 targets, how they would need to be achieved. We also provide some ambitious scenarios that I mentioned earlier. And particularly in this context, we also have a special dedicated chapter on how this SDG7 roadmap or energy transition, clean energy transition overall will help with COVID-19 recovery. So just finishing with this slide, you can see quite a number of roadmaps that have been developed by SCAP. There are roadmaps at the national level as well as subnational levels. And you can see that some of the glimpse of the cover pages, it will be nicely designed and made available to all the participants and stakeholders. So with this, I will end my presentation here and hand over the floor back to the moderator. Hina, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anis, for laying the context and the detailed information of how the model looks like. And I think that serves as a better understanding platform for the exercise we will do after lunch. So it exactly provided us how it's going to be, how this capacity building workshop is going to be feed into the model that is going to result into the expected outcomes and the roadmap that we are going to develop for Pakistan. So thank you so much, Anis, for your time and intervention. We would like to move on to a technical presentation from Mr. Talha Khan, who is a CEO of Pakistan Environment Trust. And he's going to present on the decarbonization on the industrial sector with his experience and knowledge working in the with the industries of Pakistan. So Talha, please. May I request IT to kindly present? Yes, can use this. Yeah.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Hina, for the kind introduction, and thank you so much, SDPI and UNSCAP and the rest of the bodies for organizing this session. I think the discussion we're having is great. As Dr. Hina mentioned, I'm going to be talking about industrial decarbonization. And it's when we're talking about industrial decarbonization, it's very difficult to decouple it from climate change. And climate change is a fundamental driver for a lot of trends that we're seeing in Pakistan and outside of Pakistan as well that are driving towards decarbonization journeys for different sectors. In our nonprofit, Pakistan Environment Trust, we strongly believe that climate change can actually drive economic growth for Pakistan. And it's taking this perspective that we believe would help tackle the existential crisis we have in the country. Right now, we're convening a national net zero coalition where we have 24 of the leading Pakistani companies on that journey towards decarbonization. I'll share more about that as well. But in the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, my plan is to give you a bit more context about net zero, what is leading towards the decarbonization journey, and how is it linked to energy, the discussion we're having today. But let me kick this off by making a few statements, which are very obvious for us. I mean, most of us know that Pakistan contributes less than 1% to global GHG emissions. Pakistan is one of the most affected countries by climate change. We're all facing the heat wave in Pakistan nowadays. But the topics that we don't discuss quite a lot is what are the implications of this net zero ambition that Dr. Anis mentioned as well a few minutes ago for Pakistan. What will be the job losses in Pakistan as the world moves towards net zero? What is the cost for Pakistan to tackle net zero as an ambition as well? And I think it's in answering these questions where lies the sort of opportunity for us to drive economic growth. And energy sector plays a fundamental role as the world talks about net zero. Let me talk about some of the basic science around climate change. And just bear with me because I'm sure most of us know about this, but there's a tendency sometimes we lose the forest for the trees. We can get into the detail, but sometimes that global perspective on how things are happening might be important to sort of bring back to the page as well. What you're seeing on the screens right now is the carbon dioxide emission trend over the past hundreds and thousands of years. And as you can see, there's a spike in the end that happened with the Industrial Revolution. And that spike was primarily caused because we were burning a lot more fossil fuel to generate energy. There's a lot more of us on the planet. By some estimates, the global population has tripled over the past 70 years. And this carbon dioxide was released in the air, the heat was getting trapped in the atmosphere, and the earth was getting warm. So that's the global warming phenomena that we hear about. And the concern that we had is that not that the earth is getting warm, but it's getting warm at a pace that'll make the earth too hot to live for most of us on the planet. And so that led to the Paris Agreement and then the net zero ambition, where almost 120 plus countries, 200 plus cities, thousands of companies have made that commitment to bring their emissions down to livable conditions. Now, this net zero phenomena is fundamentally important for Pakistan because it's reshaping how human activity happens across the world. The way we light up our buildings, the way we move from point A to point B, the way we source food and discharge waste, everything has to be done in a manner which reduces emissions. And our energy systems are the fundamental systems that drive a lot of our daily lives across most of the stuff that human beings do across cities and in businesses and everywhere else as well. Now, what are the implications for Pakistan for this net zero phenomena? To understand that, let me share with you a research that McKinsey did recently, where they looked at 70 countries across the globe that contribute almost 95% to global GDP. And they map these countries across two axes. So on the left-hand side, you see the transition exposure, which basically means what will happen to the economies of these countries as the world moves towards net zero. And on the bottom, you see the GDP per capita, which is basically, are these countries capable enough for solving this challenge themselves? And there are three insights from this research that I want to share with you, and they'll form the basis of the industrial decarbonization trend that we're seeing in Pakistan is happening across the globe. The first insight that you can clearly see is that Pakistan is on the extreme left of this graph, which basically means on one side, climate change is impacting our daily lives. It's also impacting our food crop, but it's directly impacting our economy. And let me give you an example. I mean, we've spoken about textile sector a few times. I mean, textile sector, employs 40% of our workforce, is a major export sector for Pakistan. Now, in this context, as the world is moving towards net zero, global fashion brands are asking textile sector to produce green products that are made from more cleaner energy. With this context, if the textile sector is not able to produce those products that are produced through more clean sources of energy, we will end up losing that market or losing that supply chain altogether. And that impact wouldn't just be restricted to textile. It will trickle down to our farmers who are producing raw material for the textile sector, and we'll lose our agriculture output and product as well. And by some estimates, this net zero trend that we're seeing across sectors, we might end up losing somewhere between 20 to 30 million jobs in Pakistan if this ambition keeps on going across the globe and we're not able to cope with that. The second insight from this research is that if Pakistan wants to achieve net zero, the cost for Pakistan to doing that is roughly somewhere around $75 to $80 billion per annum. $70 to $85 billion is twice our annual budget. is probably 25% to 30% of our national GDP, a number that is impossible for Pakistan to invest ourselves if we really want to tackle this challenge. The third insight from this research is that globally, the world needs to spend $9 trillion per annum to achieve this net zero ambition that we've outlined. Now, $9 trillion is roughly 100 times the cost bill that I shared for Pakistan. That money is sitting in the bottom right countries that you see, in the developed economies on the bottom right. And to solve this problem, this money needs to move from bottom right to the top left, the developing economies, countries like us. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that on one side, we are direly impacted by climate change. Our economy can suffer, our daily lives will suffer. There's a huge pot of money sitting outside of Pakistan, sitting outside the developing world that we can tap into. And this money is available for opportunities for platforms that either reduce emissions or adapt for climate change. And if we're able to tap into that pot of money, that can not just solve our climate crisis, but can drive economic growth as well. And this is what the world is calling the green industrial revolution. Now, I will come to 4 themes based on this context that I'm seeing from the CEOs that I'm engaging with as part of the Net Zero Pakistan Coalition. And most of the companies that are part of that coalition are textile companies. So these trends might be textile oriented, but they're mostly focused around the whole industrial decarbonization discussion that we're having. The first one is that net zero is an obligation for most of these companies. So a lot of our textile companies, I mean, they're doing it because they think this is the right thing to do, but there's a clear push that they're facing from their end consumer as well. And as they're doing that, and as that we're seeing that trend in textile, this trend will not limit itself to textile. This trend will go across cement, this will go across steel, this will go across all of the sectors that are in Pakistan, because we cannot remain isolated from the rest of the world or the supply chains with which we interact on a daily basis. So that is the first point. The net zero is an ambition that the world has signed up for. And Pakistan, as a country, it's a different debate whether we want to sign up for that or not, but our private sector and our companies need to sign up for that because that is where the discussion is going and that's where the opportunity lies as well. The second conversation that we have with them is the energy conversation, because as they've committed to net zero, most of these textile companies, energy is one of their biggest sources of emission. I mean, 2/3 of our energy is from fossil fuel. So solving that is a major question for them. We have most of the energy experts sitting here, so I'm not going to talk about the details, but all of us know that over the past decade, our energy mix is shifting, but it's interestingly shifting from fossil fuel to coal, which doesn't solve the problem at the end of the day. And so it clearly shows that our energy planning and our climate consideration are not talking to each other. We're planning for energy without taking into consideration where the world is going and what is the implication of these energy choices we're making today for our export sector, our economy. Just giving you another example, again, the same example from textile, right? Textile sector, to solve this energy problem, is literally installing solar wherever they can find an inch of space. But having done all of that, they cannot reduce all of their emissions. Their energy needs go beyond just installing solar. So they have to rely on grid energy, which comes with an emission factor that includes, dirty energy that we have in the grid right now. Now, in this context, if we're not able to provide clean energy to our textile sector and other sectors, what will happen from this graph is that the global supply chain will either end up not buying stuff from us, but that's just one part of the equation. They might not end up selling stuff to us as well, because if they sell stuff to Pakistan, our emissions end up on their books, which is bad for their books. So it's not just an export problem anymore. It's actually going to become an import problem as well. Our import bill will go up because carbon taxes will be introduced in a lot of these countries. If not tomorrow, pretty soon. So that is the next challenge. The third challenge is tapping into innovative financial tools that incentivize the drive toward clean energy. So again, Dr. Anis was talking about clean cooking fuel, renewable energy, energy efficiency. One tool that we haven't tapped into properly is the voluntary carbon market in Pakistan. Voluntary carbon market is a tool that is being deployed across the globe to incentivize projects and initiatives that drive towards emission reduction. Globally, voluntary carbon market stands somewhere between $1.5 billion right now. And the forecast is that this market will end up somewhere between $50 billion in the next 10 years or so. Unfortunately, Pakistan currently only has 10 renewable energy projects registered on that market, and we've only made $50,000 worth of transactions. Now, for a country that is facing an energy crisis, where our discussion day in and day out is about renewable energy, where 25% of our population doesn't even have access to energy, we're not tapping into that financial tool that can actually incentivize a lot of our projects in the market to drive towards renewable energy and actually subsidize some of the cost as well. Compared to that, Nepal and Bangladesh, just two names that I'm picking up from the top left of this graph, have more than 100 projects registered on the voluntary carbon market. So tapping into financial tools is going to be pretty critical as we drive towards our clean energy and drive energy transition in Pakistan. And the fourth theme that comes from them is deregulation and effective policy in Pakistan. It goes without saying that that is a fundamental blocker for most of the stuff, not just in energy, but across multiple sectors. And I'm not going to talk about the challenges that, because I'm pretty sure all of us in the group and most of the folks on the panel are experts when it comes to policy and how can we tackle that. But I'll talk about the opportunity that lies in deregulating this sector, right? I mean, I'll give you two examples. One of them from the telecom sector, and most of us who are from, at least we can think about 2 decades ago. I remember we had somewhere between 0.3 or 300,000 mobile phone subscribers in 2001. And 2018, 19 or 20, we had around 180 million mobile phone subscribers. Pakistan in 2008 was considered the third fastest growing country when it comes to telecom penetration. And we were able to revolutionize that sector because we were able to take the right policy decisions, incentivize private sector players to come into that market and create that market that allowed telecom sector to boom. Another example is from the neighboring India, where the IT revolution has completely changed the face of that economy. Indian IT industries back in 1980 had $3 million worth of exports. And today they're exporting more than $100 billion worth of IT services to the rest of the world. They were able to do that because they were able to deregulate their sector, create the right policy measures and incentives for the private sector to come in and play in that market. And that incentivized their businesses to take massive risks as well. An interesting example from India is Wipro. Wipro is one of their, for those of us who do not know, Wipro is one of their leading IT exporter from Pakistan, from India. They export north of, $10 billion of IT services, and that's probably their revenue. I might be getting the number mixed up. Wipro, interestingly, a trivia for you guys, stands for Western Indian Palm Oil Refinery. So that company in 1945 was established to focus on palm oil. But in the 70s and the 80s, when they start seeing the trend, they completely shifted their business, focused on IT. The government was conducive, it was encouraging, it created the right policy measures, opened the economy, and today that company is one of the leading IT companies in the world. So we can go on and on about examples where sectors and industries have completely shifted and changed by taking the right policy measure and the right time as well. But in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that we don't have a choice as well. To be honest, if we're facing the burn from climate change and these net zero ambitions already, if we do not become energy independent, it will tarnish our economy and our daily lives as well eventually. But on the flip side, if our many energy bodies can come together, I'm sure we can find and implement practical solutions to this problem and really take on this green industrial revolution that is happening around us. And in the end, I would just urge all of us, we have some brilliant minds sitting in the room. We'll be talking about this topic for the next 2-3 days. My only urge would be that as we're having this discussion, it'd be really important for us to leave our company hat outside of this room and wear the country hat to think about this in the interest of what needs to be done for Pakistan rather than individual companies or institutions that we represent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tala, for your excellent elaboration on how the companies need to decarbonize their processes, their systems, and how they can play their role in this clean energy efforts that we are trying to do. Moving on, and as we have talked about why we are talking about clean energy, why we are talking about transition to decarbonize some of these sectors, it is important to understand that what is actually climate change in terms of the goals that we have set for Pakistan, how this clean energy transition needs to be aligned with meeting the goals of the nationally determined contributions, and eventually the roadmap for SDG7. So for this, we have a very short presentation on understanding SDG7 and NDC targets by myself and Faisal, who's a Director Project Appraisal PPIB. I would like to request Faisal to please begin with the presentation, and then I'll take the lead next.
Thank you, Dr. Hina, and Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So we are running behind time, so we will keep it very brief. What are the Sustainable Development Goals? So the Sustainable Development Goals are collection of 17 interlinked goals. Those are designed to achieve better and sustainable future by 2030. So these were set up by United Nations General Assembly in 2015 and intended to be achieved by 2030. So since our main agenda is to discuss United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 7, that is to ensure access of affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all by 2030. So that is one of the most crucial goals, and the achievement of that goal is also important to achieve other goals related to health, education, and other climates and other sustainable developments. So as per the United Nations report SDG 2021, around 759 million people lack access to electricity, whereas 1/3 of the population, that is 2.6 billion of the world population, are relying on a dangerous and inefficient heating and cooking systems. So in order to achieve the targets of universal access of energy, we need to increase the share of renewable energy, the energy efficiency, and decarbonization of the energy sector. So that is a graph that shows overall picture of the GHG emissions. Roughly around 50 billion ton of GHG are emitted by the world each year, and the energy sector contribute for 75% of total emissions. So that is that's why the decarbonization or the clean energy transition is most important to achieve the objective of Paris agreements and to achieve the net zero emissions by 2050. And that transition is a bit challenging even for the developed countries, because on the one hand, to achieve SDGs for a universal access, you need more energy. But on the other hand, to achieve the objective of Paris Agreement, you have to keep the carbon emissions within the limits. So that is challenging, and that is more and more complex for the developing countries like Pakistan due to number of technical, policy, and infrastructure issues. So we will discuss that in the later slides. So this is just the breakdown of GHG emissions for Pakistan. We have around 438 million tons of GHG emissions each year. The data is based for, I think, 2018 and 2019 years. And around 50% of these GHG are emitted by the energy sector. And if we talk about carbon emissions, the energy sector contributes for 90% of the carbon emissions. So that shows that how the energy sector is contributing in GHG and global warming, and that make the clean energy transition most crucial amongst other sectors. So then followed by other industrial and agriculture sector, but energy sector is one of the major contributor in GHG emissions for the country. So that is energy profile of Pakistan. We can see that total energy supplies for year 2020 was 81 million ton of oil equivalent, and out of where the final energy consumption was 50 52 million ton of oil equivalent. The primary energy supplies consist of 43% share of imported sources. So that result into annual import bills of roughly between 14 to 17 billion dollars, and that is around 25% of country's total import bill. So that's why the import, how the imported sources are dependent upon these imported sources, basically hampering the economic growth and overall energy outlook. So this is similarly, this is a profile of Pakistan power sector. The power sector, again, we have mainly dependent upon imported fuels. Around 59% of shares of the electricity generation is from thermal fuels, whereas 33% from the hydro and renewable. And the peak demand for last year, it was 23,000, whereas the electricity consumption growth rate for 2021 was 7%. The major demand sector is the domestic sector, which is consuming 50% of the total electricity. So these numbers are based on the indicative generation capacity expansion plan, which is the least cost generation plan of NTDC, which forecasts the long-term demand supply projections. And that shows that by 2030, we need 61,000 megawatts of installed capacity to meet the electricity demand. And the peak demand by that year will be touching around 37.1 gigawatt or 37,000 megawatts. And to achieve these targets of the additional capacity, we need around $40 billion of investments. That is NPV number, and that consider capex and opex of the projects, and that does not include the candidate projects. That's on the committed projects. That is only for the new candidate projects. So the number is very large. So we need investments from private sectors and some other sources to build up the new generation plants in the country. And beside that, we also need corresponding increase in the transmission and distribution infrastructure. And for that, we also need a multi-billion dollars of investments in that areas. So this is again the fuel mix for comparison of fuel mix for 2021 and 2030. That shows that how we are moving away from fossil fuels. The share of the fossil fuels are declining, and the share of renewable energy and clean and green energy is increasing. Like if we see, the imported coal will be decreasing by 3%. The local coal goes up by 4% since it's an indigenous resource, so that will go up by 4%. Whereas the RLNG will go down by 15%, and then we have a significant increase in the solar by 12%, hydropower projects by 12%, and then wind by 5%. So that makes roughly 61% share of clean and green energy in Pakistan energy mix by 2030. So I must say that that is one of the might be some of the most ambitious targets from any developing country, to increase that level of share of renewable energy in its energy mix. That of course that requires a lot of investments and to come across many other barriers and challenges. So that graph is for the electricity generation. So how the electricity generation by 2030 have been changing with the fuel sources. Like for the last year 2021, we generated 130 terawatt hours, and majority of and a major portion of this electricity was generated from thermal fuels, whereas in 2030 we expected to generate majority of shares from renewable energy sources. And we can see that the hydropower shares is going to increase from 30% to 48%. So 48% of total energy will be coming from the hydropower, whereas the LNG share will go down by 3%, and there's again a big dip in imported coal from 21% to 9%. So that shows overall picture. Again, again to show the way of clean energy transition, the country is moving towards renewable and clean energy by 2030. Yeah. So despite the fact that Pakistan have a much lower per capita carbon emission consumption, have less than 1% share in global GHG emissions and carbon emissions, but even then the government of Pakistan have shown strong commitments towards renewable and clean energy transitions and announced number of policies. Similarly, the national electricity policy, which is overarching policy for the power sector, that has been announced last year, and it's basically envisioned the sustainable development of power sector, well aligned with its international commitments on climate change, and it has strong emphasis on the indigenization and environment. It revolves around 6 guiding principles, that is efficiency, transparency, competition, financial availability, environment responsibility, and integrated energy planning. So based on these guiding principles, the national electricity plan and sectoral policy framework are being developed in the electricity sector. So Pakistan as a country has been entering in 2 kinds of transformation. The first one is clean energy transition. We are targeting to achieve 60% by 2030. And the second one is major transformation of electricity sector from current single buyer model towards multiple buyer models to improve efficiency, bring competition, bring affordability in electricity value chain. So these both transformations are very challenging, and some positive things about the sector is that we are already having much lower carbon footprints in our nation grids. That turns into 356 grams CO2 per kWh. And if we implement all these policies and plans to have 60% share in 2030, then we might have one of the cleanest grid in the region, and that carbon emission number will further go below 200. That is 198 gigawatt, 198 gram CO2 per kWh. These numbers are based on the last indicative generation capacity expansion plan approved by the NEPRA. So of course, these transitions are challenging due to a number of macroeconomic, market compatibility, technical and infrastructure issues. And that's why today's conference is very important, because the SDG roadmap will provide us a very holistic picture about future course of actions to achieve these targets. So from now onward, I will hand over to Dr. Hina to come up and brief you about the progress on SDGs so far Pakistan has achieved.
Thank you so much, Faisal. I'll be very brief and quick and provide an overview of how the climate commitments look like. I'm sure a lot of discussions have happened about the progress on the SDGs and what we have achieved, but it's important to recap, especially for the next sessions that we are going to conduct after lunch. So it's easy to recap what we have discussed so far. So if we see the Pakistan's climate profile, and we have been hearing it since morning that, of course, we are not the biggest emitter. We contribute really less, but we are the topmost vulnerable country to the impacts of climate change. And as we see the share of the emissions from electricity and heat generation, we see around 21% from coal and the other fossil fuel-based resources, 39% from the oil-based, and the rest from the gas. If we consider our emissions in terms of the world and the Asia, we see it, of course, it's pretty less, but like I said, we are still considering the emissions to have been rising with the time, and when the industrial sector and with the other sectors being upscaled in the view of urbanization and population growth, we are going to couple some more impacts that we are going to face, and it's very important to look through them. So these are the revised Pakistani nationally determined contributions that we have, and where we see the high priority areas in terms of mitigation, adaptation, where in terms of mitigation, there needs to be 60% share by 2030 in terms of upscaling renewable energy in Pakistan in the energy mix. Electric vehicles, we have all heard about 30% increase in the share by 2030. In terms of the other adaptation strategies and other measures, we see the flood risk mitigation and enhanced water recharge strategies. Also, the protected areas cover will be enhanced from 12 to 15% by 2030. So these are some of the targets through different interventions like 10 billion tree tsunami, through other clean and green program and some other policies that we have heard so far. The government of Pakistan have set these targets that will be able to achieve the climate goals and the commitments made. So in terms of the sustainable development goals in a global perspective, we know that there are 17 goals and set of indicators that we follow. And these were developed by the interagency expert groups from the chief statisticians and agreed by the UN Statistical Commission. So all these signatories governments will develop their own national indicators to assist in the monitoring progress based on the goals and the targets. In terms of the indicators that we have seen, especially for the SDG7, so by 2030, there has to we need to ensure that there's a universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy, with an indicator of proportion of population with an access. So as we saw in the data, about 25% of the population in Pakistan still lacks basic access to electricity. So this is yet to be achieved. By 2030, there has to increase substantially the share of renewable energy, which the current government is working on. And in the total final consumption, we need to increase the renewable energy share. The other 7.3 target is to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. So we heard this morning of the energy efficiency and the conservation that plays a very vital role in measuring the in terms of the primary energy by GDP of the country, and crucial to meet the SDG7 goal. So some of the key messages is that the SDG7 is raising profile of the energy statistics globally. It's through a coherent framework that optimizes the use of the available data, let's say energy balances and all. Then the tracking the SDG7 requires the complete data and a good basic statistics on all the energy sources, on the access, on the efficiency improvements, and all the technological indicators that we have to take into account for the planning. At the national level, there needs to be cooperation across the institutions working on the energy domain. That has to be policy, statistics, which is very essential, and leverage on the existing resources. The national statistic offices can play a very important role in terms of surveys, in terms of linking energy to the other domains, and facilitating communication across the institutions. So as we see what has been the progress on SDG so far. So as a baseline in 2014 to 15, and up till now, there has been progress from 93 to 96%. That includes 5% off-grid. This is with regards to the 7.1 indicator. And the rest, we have several numbers in terms of, there has been a no change in terms of Punjab, in terms of the other province. But as we see in the KP, there is a reduction from 2014 to 18 to 2018 to 19, from 96.2 to 92%. So this is a provincial kind of a landscape of the numbers. So despite 90% of the total electrified homes, we had almost 50 million people still lacking access to electricity, grid electricity. So these are again some of the numbers. But I would just like to finish with this slide, that in terms of keeping up with the SDG7 goal, Pakistan has to invest a lot of finances and allocate and increase the fiscal space required for that. And with an aggregate amount of almost $24.5 billion by 2030, which is equivalent to around 0.7% of GDP every year from 2020 to 2030. That is from the IMF report. So which means that, yes, we are moving and we are developing strategies and measures and the innovations and the solutions to make a transition towards renewable energy, energy efficiency improvements, and the other parameters. But we need to also look into how we can allocate enough financial resources to make this transition happening in a more smoother, in a more accelerated manner. So this is all from my side. I would like to quickly move on to the technical presentations again, with inviting Mr. Masroor Ahmed, who is the National Project Manager from UNIDO.
Thank you, Dr. Hina. All ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here and very thankful to SDPI to invite me on this important event to share my thoughts on the very important subject, which is very close to my heart and for which I've been trying to contribute in whatever capacity I have over the few years, a few decades, especially for the last few years. Basically, I'm not going to present anything today because this is not a technical presentation. These are just jotting down of some of my thoughts based on my own experience during my association with UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Not going into details of SDG7 indicators and all these data and other informations. But I would like to emphasize that one particular thing that we have been missing in our policy making over the years is the industry. Industry has been taken as a cross-cutting issue in road mapping and policy interventions, but is not been taken as a focused intervention or focused sector to focus upon. Let me just tell you what we are doing at the moment. UNIDO, being the specialized agency in the development of industrial sector, is working for inclusive development and sustainable development of industrial sector to reduce poverty and consolidate affordable use of cleaner technology, including renewables. UNIDO projects in Pakistan are working to integrate energy efficiency technologies and energy management system and are making great progress to achieve the growth and prosperity in Pakistan industrial sector, especially small and medium enterprises. When it comes to industry, it is not a hidden fact that industry for a nation defined its destiny. With the GDP itself being an issue in Pakistan, Pakistan's industrial sector accounts for a nominal 28.11% of the GDP, and of which the manufacturing makes up around 12.52%. Therefore, it is necessary that we need a rapid industrialization to increase the GDP as well as the contribution of the industry. So affordable energy is one of the main obstacles in the rapid industrialization due to the availability of affordable energy, which is the engine of an industry. If we see, one of the most important yet staff sectors in industry itself. If you take into the consideration of the importance of industry in energy consumption, it is consuming around 39% of the natural gas, 26% of the electricity, 37% of coal, and even 7% of petroleum. So all these sources are mostly comprising the import list and consuming a large chunk of the energy that we consume. Apart from that, its importance is realized from the fact that while UNIDO is, through its projects on renewable energy, energy efficiency, has remarkably done to contribute in bringing innovative ideas such as B2B approach on solar and new advances in solar energy. So you see, from another perspective, the industries are utilizing a sizable part of their product cost as well. For a few, it is more than 50% of their product. Yes, most of the industries found it that it is around 10% of its product cost. So you can see that energy is a sizable portion when it comes to its profitability. If you get a rough estimate, around 12,000 megawatt out of 37,000 megawatt current generation capacity caters to industry alone. We are also envisaging that by 2030, we shall have 60% renewable, including hydro in the energy mix, which according to indicative generation capacity expansion plan, IGCP 22 must be 57 gigawatt, meaning a 34 gigawatt must be from renewables. So you see that we have a huge task ahead of us. Now coming to the industry, industry has its own issues, which we have to take into consideration. Apart from the power industry, for others, it is not their business to generate electricity. So the core business of the industry is to produce their own products, not to generate electricity. Yet many of them are compelled to install captive power plants within their premises for their own consumptions. Though many progressive industries, especially export-oriented industries, are doing so, but others have to rely on the national grid, which is getting scarce and unaffordable. This has resulted in shutting off of many manufacturing plants, which found it uncompetitive or even difficult to operate. So the important aspect is to be kept in mind that our manufacturing sector comprises of small and medium enterprise called SMEs, more than 90% or even more. These are the most unorganized and unaware of sector when it comes to information and technology. We are talking about Industry 4.0 nowadays, but the fact is that we are not even around Industry 2.0, especially when it comes to SMEs. These SMEs are most unproductive and least efficient energy consumers within the manufacturing sector. Whatever may be the reason, it is the sector which needed our attention wherever we are policymakers, research institutes for policy development, regulatory authorities, or development agencies. I have deeply undergone many interactions with industry policymakers and service providers and the development agencies. And let me say candidly, or admit frankly, that we have not been able to support the SME sector the way we should have. There may be many whys, but the important thing is what is the solution? We always talk about data and informations about telling the importance of energy consumption, energy conservation, energy efficiency, but we do not talk about what are the solutions for that. Having said that, the solution lies in technology and systems. But before that, we have to inculcate a conviction among the industry that they can avail these once they are available. We need to provide them enabling environment. While UNIDO, through its renewable energy efficiency, has remarkably done to contribute in bringing innovative ideas such as B2B, business-to-business approach for solar installations, new advanced solar power storage technologies for industry, hybrid solar syncing with gas generation, real-time energy efficient monitoring systems for furnace operations, and there are other several issues that still persist that haunt the sector. So coming back to renewables, this may be a very good starting point for SMEs to avail the technology with its maturity and tested technology, rapid installation process, and low payback. So this will help them to start looking onward with faith in technology to use and system approach. As one of the speaker previously has also highlighted that energy efficiency to be taken in sync with the renewable energy as well. When it comes to industry, this is a proven fact that during one of our projects, which is still in a processing stage, we have implemented energy management system in more than 50 industrial units. And believe me that apart from energy efficiency interventions, we have also seen that around 20 megawatt renewable energy installations have been done. Why it is so? Why that we are working for energy management system where we are also getting the interventions in the solar? Because when you work for energy management improvement, the energy performance of the industry comes around it. So when we talk about energy performance, you cannot ignore the solar and renewable energy technologies. So energy, when we talk about energy efficiency, we always talk about energy, clean energy and energy technology related to renewable, because it is a fact that working with energy efficiency technologies is a very difficult program, because there's a lot of technologies involved. We have a least capacity in moving for energy efficiency, but thanks to the technology itself and the sort of service providers that we have, the energy related, the renewable energy related interventions are gaining ground. So this is a door we can enter into technology, how to make use of these technologies to prosper the growth of industrial sector. So the problem remains itself, even we talk about the renewable energy technology. What is this? Basically, it is the access to finance, especially for the SMEs. And of course, to avail this access to finance, we have to rely on the technology itself. So the capacity, the technical capacity of SMEs is still one of the limitation, along with, of course, other technical things like the limitation of space in case of solar PV. So, but I think the B2B mechanism, which has been advocated by UNEDO, is fast gaining pace as pay-as-go models have been introduced in the industry. And now the industry has not to think about the technical capacity or even finances. But still, for SMEs, this is still a very slow start. So as I said earlier, that while we talk about the issues and while we talk about many other things, we have to talk about simple solutions as well. Taking cue from my experience in the industries, I have few suggestions to be made here as well, which can be helpful if you are talking about making maps or taking the road maps for this sector. So a management system development approach shall be promoted within the industry. This is I think one of the things that is always been very helpful and which has been acceptable to the industry. So rather than having the energy audit protocol standalone approach, we have to think about how to start moving industry towards the energy management system. Because this energy management system is basically based on international standard ISO 50001. And I would say that in comparison with other ISO systems like ISO 9000 and ISO 14000, this 50,000 is basically an economic case. It not only brings, it don't only requires investment, but it provides you the payback once you start investing on it. So for NICA can incentivize SMEs to go for continual improvement in its energy performance rather than moving for bits and pieces efforts. UNEDO has already contributed in it by providing energy management system services to many industries, and by grace of God, out of 50 industrial units that we worked on, around 11 or 12 industries is already certified as ISO 50001 certified organizations, fully geared for the implementations. And while going for these implementations, one survey that we done with these 50 industrial units, which is going to be published through a progress report, at least 5% energy saving has been done in practical. It's not potential. 5% has been done by the industries. And you can see that if we are talking about 50 industries and the consumption that they have, 5% in initial 5 or 6 months is quite a bit. The second point that I want to elaborate is that NECA and Alternate Energy Development Board, along with SMEDA, shall work in sync to address issues for industry SMEs as a special sector. SMEDA can initiate identifying and classifying businesses on technology and process. This is very important because if we talk about industry, nothing can happen. We have to subclassify industries into subsectors so that these subsectors can be clubbed together to know what specific issues they have. Once, because if you think industry as a whole, each industry, each subsector has its own issues. So SMEDA can initiate by identifying and classifying businesses on technology and process. So that cluster approach can be utilized for identify common issues and special issues, so solutions, sorry. We need to generate internal benchmarks for each subsector so that we actually know where the SME sector stand. The problem that we have, the conviction that is not generated among the industry is that we are not trying to bring into the information where they stand as far as the consumption, energy consumption is concerned. So if you just talk about the percentages, it will not going to help them. I know that NECA, which is already working on this categorization and classification of energy efficiency intensive industries, need to incentivize such classified sectors. I'm not talking about penalties or penalizing. We have to work on incentives. These classified, identified subsectors shall form special technical cells within their existing associations that could work jointly with academia for R&D on solving technical issues, including related to energy performance. So this is missing in our associations. Of course, the Sugar Association has one technology wing, but the other associations hasn't done anything on it. Again, the cooperation between ADB and NECA shall think about incentivizing those SMEs that want to install solar solutions to first go for energy audits and energy optimization so that an optimized solar solutions is determined after energy efficiency efforts are completed. This is important because this is very logical. That's one, you have to reduce your load and then you go for the solar installation so that the investment cost can cut down. Then another important aspect is the formation of special credit guarantee mechanism shall be devised with the support of the State Bank of Pakistan for renewable financing for SMEs. Though Pakistan Credit Guarantee Company was established in 2019, but it seems that it's not in total operational yet. Then also someone talk about the State Bank Green Guidelines, which were formulated in 2017, on which UNEDO also gave its recommendations, is still yet to be enforced, and so that commercial banking sector could effectively contribute in lending soft credits to SMEs. And lastly, to have a competitive environment to induce industrial sector in going for energy reductions, UNEDO is launching first energy award for industry with 4 categories in 2022 in collaboration with NECA, which needs to be continued after the project is over and is to be expanded to become a regular event to promote a healthy competition within the industry. With this, I hope that SDPI initiative shall be very supportive to the national cause, and UNEDO would be ready to contribute and to see the prospect to provide any support that is needed in this cause. Once again, I would like to thank all the SDP colleagues to listen to me, to my simple thoughts, and I hope that we are going to have some really good, going to be have a good roadmap which can put incentives to the further growth of the industrial sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for a very comprehensive and insightful presentation, and also some really good suggestions for us to take forward. I would quickly move on to the next presentations on the transport sector, and I would like to call Mr. Lincoln Flor, Senior Transport Specialist from the World Bank Group. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lincoln Flor. I'm a senior transport specialist in the transport global practice based in Pakistan. First, let me thank the Institute for inviting me to share our views and approach, how we are working the decarbonization in the Pakistan's transport sector. And second, at this time of the afternoon, and I see that you are very tired, listening a lot of figures, numbers, and after a long morning. So I will try to be quickly and present what we are trying to do in Pakistan with our team. And let me check if, okay. Maybe you know these numbers that we're talking about. Transport contributes about 14% of the GDP in Pakistan. So this means that this is very relevant sector, and anything we do in transport will help growth, will help accessibility, will help equity. So also there is 2.5 million of jobs are created in the transport sector. In terms of the contribution, that is the bad news, in the terms of the contribution of emissions, we're talking about, our colleague from the institutes, he mentioned 16%, but we think we're about 23, 24%. This means that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, to trying to reduce the emissions in Pakistan, especially in the transport sector. You know better than me, we go outside and we go to the big cities in Pakistan, like Lahore, Karachi, and also other intermediate cities like Faisalabad, Multan, Jurakwala, Quetta, many cities with a lot of population in Pakistan. And we see a lot of two-wheelers, a lot of three-wheelers. Today I read in the news that given these high prices in the fuel, in the gasoline, the demand for motorbike is increasing, and also the prices of motorbikes. About 70% or more of the vehicles are motorbikes in Pakistan. Because motorbikes are very flexible, you can go door to door. If I put a BRT like we have in Islamabad, we have in Rawalpindi, it's going to be complicated, but maybe I have to take 3 buses. So sometimes we are designing the systems that are not usable, are not suitable for our users or our people. So 2-3 wheelers are growing. And the challenge is how to bring these 2-3 wheeler people to the BRTs, to the bus rapid transit systems. No, we are not talking about metros. No, metro maybe is a very expensive solution for Pakistan. No, and we have a big space room to make more efficient transport in Pakistan. Congestion, no, only you have to go to Lahore and take a trip, no, and you will see that there is a mix of modes in the same streets, motorbikes, cars, vans, donkeys, bicycles, people, everything going everywhere, no? And this is causing the congestion, so the speed, and sometimes is 5 kilometers per hour, 10 kilometers per hour. So this means that people can spend 2-3 hours per day trying to go to their offices or to their factories. In terms of the quality of air, no, there is Lahore is, I think, and also Faisalabad, among other cities in Pakistan, they have very low quality of air. That this is scaring the authorities to take decisions. Like this is one of them that we can have in a space to discuss what can be what can be done, no? And also, all these combination of factors are creating a poor liability, especially in the big cities, no? Where we have to spend hours to go to come back home, or we have to commute with very difficulties. So this means that we have a big agenda, no? And we see every day these pictures that we say one day, no, when this can be changed. Who is going to make the changes? Where is the champion that will help us to make this different? So we have two key areas that we are working now. We are working urban mobility solutions. Why? Because we need to use massive transport. Any livable city you can see in the world, developing or developed country, everyone, if you go to the UK, if you go to New York, if you go to Bogota, you go to Mexico City, you will see big buses. People are not using their cars, they are using their buses. These big buses. You can go to your work, you can go to the way that you have to go. You are going to study, you go to your school, whatever, but using massive transport systems that can mobilize thousands of people. So our approach and our work is very focused and try to identify massive transport solutions for big and middle size cities in Pakistan. And then, also we need to walk more in Pakistan, no? And the design of the stations in the distance should be well designed in terms that we can walk. We can use also bicycles, no? I was quite very surprised when I arrived to this country and I see only a few bicycles, and very risky. If you go to an intersection biking, maybe no one is going to respect you. No, so road safety is a key issue also in Pakistan. It needs to be addressed. No, when we're talking about BRTs, no, we're talking about low cost of BRTs. If you take a look the type of stations we have in Islamabad, very fancy stations for the BRT, very nice and very expensive. We don't need these solutions. We need very modest stations, open stations, no, very flexible, adaptable. We can increase it as the demand increase, no, and very cheap. Because finally, who is going to pay this? No, there is an issue for affordability in our people. There is limited resources in the provinces and also in the federal government. So we have to find solutions. And the amounts that my colleagues are mentioning here, billions, where we're going to have these billions? There is no way, especially when we have fiscal constraints. So we have to be a little bit more smart, trying to find what kind of priorities, what are the solutions, how we can address it. And one thing that I think we should also think, that transport needs to be close to local governments. If you see any good city in the world, the city is responsible for urban transport, not the province, the city. The city has the capacity to plan, has the capacity to change the use of land, no? And they get resources from the property tax, from the parking, and you say, if you take a look, if you take a walk only around this hotel, how many cars can you find parking? Double lane parking. How much is a fine in Pakistan when you cross a red line? 500 rupees. So we need to change this, because if we need to change. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to make big reforms in Pakistan. No, people need to recognize that if we are giving a parking for a car, we are subsidizing that man that has this car, and we are not giving to the poor the right public transport they need to go to work. So this needs to change. So a lot of reforms needs to be implemented in Pakistan. I heard also from my colleagues that one of my colleagues mentioned that there is a target that in 2030 the new sellings, the new cars are going to be electric, 30%. And 2030 is just in few years. Okay, we have a national EV policy, it's good policy, but the question is how we are going to implement that policy. Who is going to implement? Who is going to coordinate the policy? Who is going to monitor the policy? So we have a policy, okay, fine. But the provinces should implement the policy, because if I want to run a bus in Lahore, I have to go to the province government to give a license, to give a permission. And what are the instruments? What are the incentives we have to do that? So we have a policy. So when we say ambitious target, 2030, 30% of selling new cars, yes, but how we can go there? What is the role of the provinces? What is the role of the city, of the local governments? What is the kind of environment we need to get there? So there is a lot of questions. What are the kind of institutional reform? What is the kind of governance we need? No? What is the kind of leadership? Because when we say, okay, we have a policy. Okay, there is the policy, very good policy. Needs to be maybe improvement that all policies will need. Which is the champion? Fine, the champion is here. We have a climate ministry. We have planning commission. No, we have different actors. No, but the actors maybe are not talking, are not speaking each other. So we need to work. No, because I see that is a very, very challenges. No, very, very challenges to if we want to change and decarbonize transport in Pakistan. And you can see since 3 days ago, the liter of gasoline has increased 30 rupees. No, and now people is a little bit scared, no, because the price of the gasoline is because we are under a context that is difficult to manage prices. No, most of the countries have are doing the same. No, but at the end we are removing the subsidies. If we want to choose to electricity, no, to electric cars, okay, we have to increase the incentives here and reduce the incentives here. That's it. It's a trade-off. This war is a trade-off game. So that's the way that we think in the bank we should approach. Second idea, freight logistics. Around 50% of the total emissions in transport in Pakistan are coming from freight, from trucks. No, trucks mobilize 90% of the freight in Pakistan. No, and rails only 5%. No, and the 70s, no, rails have more than 50%. Rails are more efficient. Why we don't switch from trucks to rails? No, we're more efficient. We talk about efficiency this morning here. No, it's complicated. It's not complicated. No, so how to revival Pakistan rails, but with a different view, with a more market-oriented view, bringing private rail operators. And they go and they will make the business with the owners of the cargo. They will sign contracts and they will improve the level of cargo. At the same time, we can modernize the fleets, the truck fleets. No, because if you take a look, the fleet is very old, over 15 years, 20 years, average life. So we need to think in practical solutions. We need a beautiful railroad in Pakistan. Beautiful. We don't have that in other countries. There is an asset there. We're not using the asset. We're not, only 5% of the freight of Pakistan, no, is something that we can move quickly. And we can reduce finally GHG emissions. No? At the same time, we will modernize the trucking industry. And then only a little bit about roads, not new roads. We're not talking about new roads. No, We have roads in Pakistan. We have about 500,000 kilometers of roads in Pakistan. Huge number. Everywhere, no? Everywhere. We have roads, different categories of roads. But our roads are not in good quality. We don't have all-weather roads. This means that during the summer, kids cannot go to school. It's difficult to go to the hospital. It's difficult to go to market. Our small farmers get big challenges to go to market with their products. They're paying high transport costs. So in roads, we need to make climate investments, because this is a vulnerable country. If you take a look, the floodings, the landslides, the avalanche, all these disasters. Only to make an example for you. In KP, between 1990 to 2020, 50 years, the probability of landslides and floods are 40%. This means every other year. Big disasters in one province. I'm not talking about Sindh, I'm not talking about Balochistan, no. This is only one province. And you cannot connect any districts. So there is a big province with huge disasters that we know, and there is disconnected from the rest. So this means that climate investments needs to go there. No, this means that the planning for roads, even new roads, even existing roads, needs to consider the climate risks. No, not only where are the poor, that is very important. There are districts that are poor in the north, for example, in the north, very in the top north of KP, for example, we have very poor people there that they need rural roads. But these rural roads needs to work the whole year. How can I can help students going to school if the road is in bad conditions? They will not go to school. They only will go to school part of the year. The worst numbers in education and enrollment and attendance, you can find in Balochistan and KP. And there are transport barriers that girls are facing. Is long school, is unsafe transport, So these things needs to be changed, And I moved to, and finally, I think next steps. I will not talk next steps because this is coming in the afternoon, So you will have the opportunity to discuss with your peers, your colleagues, what Pakistan should do and what are the responsibilities, Thank you so much. Also, thanks to my colleague, Fatima, Sarah, that helped me prepare this presentation. Any contact, please don't hesitate to contact. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lencon. I know it's been an exhaustive session since morning, but I'm sure that it has enriched us with a lot of knowledge and information that could set a context for the activity after the lunch. But before we break out the lunch, we have a last speaker, Dr. Nadia Farouk. She's an economic consultant at Asian Development Bank. Please.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I can see the lethargic expressions of everyone, including me as well, because it's a long morning we are sitting here. So I will just go through quickly, and it's not a hardcore kind of a presentation. It's a very, not on a serious note, it's just day-to-day expressions and observations. So based on that, I have just gathered the information, and I'm just going to present in front of you. So where is the, yes. Yeah. So today I will talk about a little bit about energy sector as well as the transport sector, but very, very brief. So our major focus is on the energy sector and the SDG7. So I think from morning till now, we all know about what is this SDG7 and what are these targets. These are 5 targets, and SDG7 is based on energy. Without energy, we can't do anything. Even we can't make or organize this session, which is going on. So it is extremely an important indicator. So, well, yeah. Next is all about the Asian Development Bank, because I'm working as a transport economist as well as the fiscal consultant with the Asian Development Bank. So I have 2 of the projects currently working on it since last 5 to 6 years. So I would say that ADB is contributing a lot in the energy sector as well as the transport sector. And Pakistan was a founding member of ADB since 1966. And we can see that ADB is contributing in infrastructure, urban services, private sector, energy, food security, transport networks, and social services. So now we can see that based on a report where we analyzed the ADB's footprint in the energy sector of Pakistan from 2005 till 2017. And we can see that ADB has contributed in the investments in power transmission and distribution, institutional and regulatory reforms, sovereign and non-sovereign financing for conventional and renewable energy generation, and lastly, technical assistance, which is very important part for our government. And I think this this continuation of this technical assistance should be continued because this is very important. Now, looking at the country of business plan, this is COBP. For every 2 years, Asian Development Bank used to make COBP. And according to the COBP of 2021 till 2023, the focus in energy sector is on, number 1 is on renewable energy capacity to increase, and the second one is efficiency of the energy sector to be improved. And the key assistance areas are renewable energy generation. This is the top priority. And then energy efficiency and conservation. Thirdly, electricity transmission and distribution, oil and gas transmission and distribution, because major chunk of our energy mix is based on oil. And then energy sector development and institutional reforms. For getting all these targets and key assistance, ADB has allocated almost $1.84 billion. And this becomes the total share of almost 29% of the whole COBP. So we can see that it's a huge sum. And I hope that it will definitely play its positive role in this sector of the country. Next is the transport sector. And in transport sector, we can see the main targeted area of ADB is for these 21 till 23 is greater and higher quality connectivity between economies and our markets, because without transport sector, an efficient transport sector, we cannot contribute in the trade sector, or we cannot increase our GDP growth. So this is an important sector, and the key areas where ADB is targeting is the road transport. I am also working one of the biggest road transport that is included having the umbrella of 3 major provinces. We have recently concluded the Punjab Sustainable Road Infrastructure Project. Now we have a fact-finding mission for Sindh project that is coming in the next month. And after that, we will move towards the KP Rural Road Project. So I think these are really good initiative. As Mr. Floor has already mentioned, the rail is very important area. And I totally agree with him that now after 18th Amendment, all the powers have been devolved to the provinces. So provinces has to come up and make their integrated strategies and policies with the federal government, and they should do work based on not on just the provincial level, rather individual city should play their own role, their own policies, and generate their own revenue. And after that, they will be in a position to spend on renewable energy and the transport sector. So urban public transport is also the major agenda, one of the major agendas of ADB. And ADB has allocated almost $1.04 billion, which is the total share of almost 16.4% of COBP. Next, significant of transport projects, we can see that, as I have already mentioned, that it has its own immense importance. And then ADB has already provided substantial support for constructing regional road infrastructure and has a larger pipeline of planned lending operations. ADB supports for transport and trade facilitation led to significant savings in vehicle operating costs and travel time, and reduced border crossing times, and also to expansion of economic activities with new industries and special industrial zones developing along the regional road corridors. We can see the CPAC has also played an important role in the road infrastructure, and one of the major projects of ADB is CARIC, where it is going to connect all these the CARIC countries through these road infrastructure projects. Well, next is, this is a bus rapid transfer. I know, and I totally agree with Mr. Floor that it is one of the expensive projects, the BRTs. And I just want to mention over here what kind of BRT ADB has contributed, because it was a co-financed project with the ADB and one other organization, as well as with the KP governments. So it has given this, that is also called zoo in Pashto. If any one of you is a Pashto speaking who knows that, it means just let's go. I also don't know much about Pashto, but this is what they say. So Zoo Peshawar is jointly financed, as I have already told you. And the good thing is that it is expected to lead to a 31,000 ton equivalent reduction in carbon footprint through this Zoo Rapid Bus project. So this is the good thing, that now in the recent projects, ADB is considering the climate change and environmental effects in every project, including infrastructure and all other areas. So, Zoo Peshawar features 30 stations along with the 27-kilometer corridor linking east to west corridor across the city. It runs a fleet of low-emission electricity hybrid buses with dedicated lanes to reduce congestion. These cycles are also part of those. And then, in addition to well-lit stations, there are priority facilities for women, the elderly, and people with disabilities. So the entire line also has 100% step-free universal accessibility. Now, winding up all of the, which have already I said, so where we should focus for further kind of recommendations or observation, where should we work on for future? So we should strengthen to support the clean energy and conservation through investments in renewable energy generation and energy efficiency, as well as review the renewable energy policy, which is always already here. And I was listening in the morning, there was so much over-ambitious targets are there. Somebody was saying 60% mix is going to be there by 2030. So I pray and I wish that we could be able to achieve those highly ambitious targets. So it is, we should review our renewable energy policy for having some realistic based outcomes. And then it is important to carry on the advisory services from the organizations like World Bank, ADB through their research-based outcomes. This is very important to have third party, and also because they have their strong research-based analysis, which can be helpful for the country like us. And next is, there is a need to promote the best practice quality standards in transport project design and implementation, because road safety is very important. We cannot see, even in Islamabad, I'm born and raised in Islamabad, but now I can see the situation of roads, which is very pathetic. And we can see how many, safety hazards we feel, and those are really very painful, and we should think about it. So robust safeguards and environmental standards are essential to be evaluated on priority basis. Last is increased private sector participation in transport operation and maintenance. This is very important area. We should engage the private sector. We cannot get everything through the government. So here is a time to involve everyone, the NGOs, the development sector, private sector, provincial governments should do their work, as well as the cities should generate their own revenues for getting such kind of goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nadia, and thank you everybody once again. I would like to appreciate and pay my special thanks to all the guests.